Good morning. If we could take our places, please. Chief Miller promised me an extra chair up here. Thank you. I do apologize for being late. Before we get started this morning, I would like to turn it over to the city manager. If you can give us just a brief overview of where we're at.
Okay. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. We have provided to you a document referred to 2014 Budget Committee recommendations. This was a joint effort between the Deputy Mayor, Ginny, and Jeff's office and my office. What we took is the status of all of the decisions. It looks like this. It was just handed out to you. We took all of the decisions that have been presented and identified whether it was accepted, whether it was turned down, or whether it's still under consideration. So the way that you should read this, if it's red, that means it was considered and not passed. If it's green, it was considered and it was accepted or passed. And if it's yellow, it's still an item that needs to be discussed. And our hope today, we made a tremendous amount of progress last Saturday. We identified about $1 million in cuts. What we would like to do is get through the rest of this and hopefully have a balanced budget. So at that point, unless Jeff, you have any comments, I think we're ready to roll. Jeffrey?
Jeff, I know you have some comments. Come on with it.
Madam Chairman, members of the committee, good morning. Just one quick item. We did provide to you last night by email and this morning at your places a budget supplement. There's not a ton of questions and answers in there. You might flip through. There's some information there on potential savings from vacancies, but the one key issue I wanted to point out is a mea culpa about an error that we had in the value of the cost of non-union pay increases from 2013 to 2014, which we had shown in your sheets as $1.6 million. That number is actually $300,000. I do apologize for both the error in general and the significance of it. Based upon our work yesterday, literally going position by position through where we stand with non-union in the general fund, we're confident that 300 number is the right one. So I do apologize for that change. Madam Chairman, just to
And before you continue, I personally want to say I appreciate your honesty, and I appreciate you bringing that forward right now. We all make mistakes, you know, and you're crunching a lot of numbers, so we appreciate that.
It's kind of you. You should be more angry with me than
Well,
that.
I'm not going to at this time, but.
I got that covered.
Well, that's good. That's not funny, but that's good.
So where we left off last time is that we still have a general fund deficit of $3.26 million. It's a levy equivalent of 3.37 in the general fund, and I did want to point out, so it's not forgotten, that the manager's budget recommendation does include a mill levy increase in the debt service fund of 1.1 mils. So in the aggregate where we sit today, to get to balance and incorporating that increase in the debt service fund, it's about a little bit less than 4.5 mils equivalent to property taxes.
All right, before we move on, is there any questions or comments or concerns? Councilman Harmon?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I'm going to direct this to the city manager. I don't know who else needs to go to. What's that? I'm sorry?
No, go ahead, continue on.
Okay. Yeah, Jim, this happens every year, and you know, we're just inundated with paper. I've got before me in triplicate the same report, which was the same one that was emailed to me yesterday. I don't know about other council members, but I spend most of my budget time just sorting through all the papers, culling out what's a duplicate, what's a triplicate. Can we somehow reduce the amount of paper that we have to dig through every year? I mean, this is absurd. I'm sorry you had to be bear the brunt of my frustration, but seriously, why do we have to get triplicates? And does
So-
anybody else,
well-
frustrated by that, or am I the only one?
No, you know, Councilman Harmon, I feel your frustration, and I understand they have to continue to revise things. And this is why I've asked for this, so we all get the understanding of what happened on Saturday, you know what I'm saying?
Well, I understand that. but
And then,
that's-
and the council members that weren't here, and that's why I try to ask that they color code them or something that we can take out of our book and put in what we need to, but I understand what you're saying. When I get home, I start weeding through, okay, I think I need this, I think I don't, so I do understand what you're saying. Jim, if you could respond to that,
Yeah, Deputy Mayor,
please.
thank you. Councilmember Harmon, absolutely agree. We made the revision to try on this document so that we can put in one, just like we did last week, but with updated information, easy to read, color coding. We would hope that the only document that you need to focus on today is this particular
Absolutely.
document. But I understand you, and we'll continue to address that.
So
There-
why do I have three of them?
Because there was an iterative process. As we identified it, it got better, but I take full blame for that.
But we need all three, correct?
Today, I think that we're fine if we just focus this document right here, the final one which represents the work that you and Jenny did that came over to our office. We updated it with the color coding, and this document is representative of all the decision points that we need to focus on today as have been defined.
Okay.
Doesn't conflict.
And I did, Harmon, ask for that only because I think I started getting confused, you know, and I thought it would be easier for everybody to color code to know, oh, that's out, oh, that's in, or whatever. But he does hear your concern. Do you have anything else?
No.
Okay. Thank you. I did see somebody.
And
somebody
the only question I had was related to that, in that the one we got yesterday was 6 pages long. The one we got this morning was 7 pages long, and so the question is, are they exactly the same? Can we tear up the one from yesterday?
If I can resolve this issue right now, the only document that you should be focusing on is the one that I introduced at the beginning of this meeting. Feel free to do anything you want with the other ones.
Well, not anything, but, okay, are we all there? Are we all there? Okay. Did I see another hand on this side? Mr. Mayor?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. However, Mr. City Manager, this is also, this sheet, I find helpful. I want to just add, because it does show our actions last week, and at the bottom, it says where we stand as of today on the second sheet.
Yes,
Correct?
yes.
So that's where we are as far as the general fund revenues and expenditures and anticipated mill levy
Yes.
based on the decisions made to date.
Yes. Mayor, Deputy Mayor, last week we had that document. We continue to update it. We're still running this document as a live dynamic document on our computer. What we have done today is to, based on conversation that occurred during the week, is to provide a worksheet that allows you to focus, to know what you focused on and what you still need to focus on. We will continue to update the live budget document, which tells us what our tally is at the end of the day. We will update you as we go through it.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions or concerns?
Deputy Mayor?
Yes.
Just to clarify my comment, I really appreciate getting them. I just find, so I like both of these, and I do like the color coding as well. I had sent in a note just for future, and maybe people would disagree, that if when these are produced for us, they have extra lines, then we ourselves can use them as worksheets if we want to make notes or, you know, come to a meeting and using this worksheet for a single document. It's just a suggestion. Thank you.
I'll take it, okay. All righty. Anything else before we get started? Chad, you got anything you want to say?
No, Deputy Mayor.
All right, okay. I see you there. All righty. Who would like to start? Does anybody have any, Councilwoman Michelle?
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Before we started, I thought that Mr. Harmon made a great point last week when we met, stating that today was important because it would allow us a chance, not only after listening to all the social services organization, to really take a look at where we really wanted to focus our funding, what additional things we were gonna look at. And of course, we still have the 4.5 that we want to reduce from our levy. And knowing that social services are one of the things that we're going to evaluate, what I would like to bring to the table is if we could, before we look at any of the social services organizations, before we look at any of the reports that they provided to us, if we could discuss some of the criteria or the classifications that we would like to fund, that we feel strongly as a body to fund that provides some support to the city.
Okay. All right.
Right now, Councilwoman Hiller had passed some documents, and I really like what she had. Do you have enough for everybody? And Councilwoman Hiller, I'm not gonna steal your thunder, so I could.
No, go ahead. Well, this document, I simply took the one that Councilman Harmon had encouraged me to bring back last week, and simply, without any names or any numbers, broke the social services down into categories. Oh, thank you. Subject matter of what kind of services are provided. It seemed that if people did want to look back at social services, that looking at what cities are supposed to do and what we want to do, you know, what our primary purposes are and what things we are funding outside the city that take care of things that are primary purposes for us or that would otherwise come to us. And that's the ones that have migrated their way to line items over the years, and I listed as contracted city services. And then in terms of the youth and social services, if we do want to fund those kinds of things, what are those categories? Because it is very hard to go through that process when you've got numbers in front of you and compelling stories, which we all know and care a lot about.
This, you know, looking at this, Karen, and I think this is great. I'm not gonna spend a lot of time on evaluating this, because what we're going to do is we're going to set up how to handle this differently next year, and I think that would be better at that meeting. I don't really think it would be very, very beneficial for us to go over this for a whole hour. I don't want to spend a lot of time on it.
I didn't think so either. I brought
Okay.
this because if people did want to talk about it,
Okay.
it seemed like a good tool for people to use to contemplate.
But this is your tool, bring it forward. We would need to vote on that, but I don't want to use this meeting for that. I want to
No.
really use this meeting for what we're going to do, incentives or cuts or whatever, okay? So if we can kind of keep that, here's another piece of paper, Mr. Harmon, that we have.
I didn't give you that one.
Mr. Harmon, if you want to mark that as social services, and I think you have one, so here's the second piece of paper that you have, if you didn't print it. But let's not spend a lot of time on that today. I think this is great. I think you've done a good job, but I'm gonna put that in my file for social services, if you don't mind. And let's.
Well, I would defer back to Councilwoman De Isla. but
Okay,
she
I
did not have it.
appreciate that, and having heard what I've said, I don't want to spend a lot, what this meeting is for us to bring some incentives to the table or cuts and try to get there, okay? This may help, it's gonna help us get there, but it's not gonna help us get there today. I think that's better used at that, and if anybody wants to fight the chair, we could fight. I've been known to do that, but I just don't think that that's using our time wisely. But I appreciate you bringing that to the table. Is there any other discussion regarding that? If not seeing any other incentives or cuts that we have at the table? Karen?
I have a list.
Okay.
Simply items to put out for the consideration of the body. I spent a lot of time trying to assess where we were. I think when when we first started, I asked about a 5-year forecast. I do think when we're looking at whether we're holding the line on taxes or whether we would increase taxes, it's important to have an idea of what the coming years might look like either way. And I know that Councilwoman Schwartz, I haven't had a chance to read them all the way through, but has done some good, asked some good questions about, what we've done with salary and raises over the last few years to give us some context, which I think is helpful. So what I wanted to do first was get an idea of what would happen next year. If we set the budget at what we think is reasonable, would next year, would things kind of take care of themselves, or would we need to raise taxes again just to cover what we had done? And you've got some blanks in the first line because I asked our consultant, Mr. White, if he could venture an idea of what might happen with property values in the next couple of years. If I could get him to venture.
I forgot my magic 8 ball, but.
That's good, because you said it only did yes and no.
It only does yes and no questions. I think if we look historically at assessed value changes for the city, like if you took a very long-term view, what you would see is increases that are relatively small, 1 or 1.5% a year. So you start with a base, relatively close to $1 million per mill, and I would count on relatively small growth. As I mentioned, we did see some growth in the 2013 preliminary AV from the county. That was exclusively related to new construction. There wasn't any growth in the existing base, and that new construction figure could have included some items rolling off of property tax abatement, those kinds of things. That's how they show up. So, I would be relatively conservative when you look at what those increases, might be in those areas. So, a 1% increase, for instance, in the general fund would be around $215,000 a year.
215,000?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Okay. Well, with that in mind then, almost no change in property tax next year and maybe the year after that. Hopefully things would begin to pick up. Our debt service does have a bubble this year that we know we're facing. It should drop off by $2 million next year. I consulted with Mr. White, and he indicated that the year after that might be pretty similar. It may drop off just a little, but maybe not significantly.
And
If-
before
Go
you
ahead.
stray from that one, if I might interrupt, 2016, we see an increase in debt service related to Heartland Park and College Hill. So even though overall debt service is dropping, the contribution toward that debt service of Heartland Park and the College Hill TIF increases, and that you make your own presumptions about how well financed those increases will be. And this number, of course, assumes that we don't issue any new debt.
No, it does assume that we issue debt. It does. I used your chart and the one that I had before.
Okay.
It does, because otherwise it drops about another 600,000.
Okay.
And Heartland Park goes up about 400,000 in 2016, and College Hill goes up
Around 200,000.
200,000.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'd still, the franchise fee revenue starts mid-year this year, so it would go up about 600,000 next year, assuming we continue with that commitment. Parks and Rec drops by $1 million a year for 2 years, and then it's gone. We've got a 2-year commitment on the police cars. That 300,000 will drop off in 2016. Lawson pays off by 2016. Our health insurance to early retirees drops off by 2016. The big bubble in 2010. I wasn't quite sure what the number was. I know it's about 5,000 a year per person.
Yeah, that 250,000 is pretty close.
Okay, then we will need the new fire companies for Station 13. Anyway, we can hold our own. There ought to be maybe a couple million that could help to absorb growth, just raises and inflation, it seemed. That was encouraging, and I stuck in there long-term. We still could save at least 5 mils if we, and that's a long-range plan, can convert from cash to bonds on general fund.
Okay, I thank you, Karen, and these are Karen's assumptions for future years, so
Well, they are drawn from they are Karen's assumptions, but
Mm-hmm.
they're drawn from what we had. And I wanted to look at that before I started so that I could then
Okay,
make
what-
some suggestions, which are there.
and I appreciate, but I just want the viewing members at home to know
Gotcha.
that these are Karen's assumptions for future years. Okay, Karen?
Okay. Wanted to confirm with Mr. White about the the franchise fee revenue being good at 600,000.
So the dialogue we had was when would we see the collections of that start? My belief is that it is effectively a tax on gross receipts. It doesn't really matter when individuals see that on their bill, but we actually have a meeting with Westar on Tuesday this week, so we can ask the question, get some definition, and also look at the actual agreement itself to confirm that. So let's leave this item open for now, although I think our number is good.
Okay, sounds good. Next one, deduct.
The issue would be, one of the options on our sheet, I went back to the sheet. So if people go to the second page of the,
Karen, I think let's just run through it.
okay.
I think everybody should have ran it, and if they're either gonna vote it up or vote it down.
Well, it's not a new idea is the point. It's
Exactly,
from the city manager's
exactly,
proposals. And
exactly.
so it would be to move to deduct the one FTE from purchasing or payroll at the amount of $40,000.
Okay, is there a motion? Is there a motion on the floor to do that?
That's a motion.
Is there a second to the motion to do that? Failed.
That's fine.
Continue on.
Deduct an HR specialist 3 or the HR alternative in the amount of $60,000. I move.
There's a motion on the floor. Is there a second? Is there a second? Continue on.
Add e-ticketing in the amount of $300,000. So moved.
There's a motion. I will second that for discussion. There's a motion and a second for discussion. Elaine.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. When we heard the testimony on this, it was discussed that there would be savings down the road from using e-ticketing. Can we get and I don't want that savings to go into oblivion, that we lose track that we are going to have savings. Can we attach to that motion or somehow that we do know that there is a savings, what the savings will be, and then include that savings in the budget for future years? Because once we get the e-ticketing going, there will be a savings. And a lot of that savings has to do with staff time, that they won't have to be doing what they're doing, and the e-ticketing will save. So the caveat is, what is the savings if we do the $300,000 for the e-ticketing?
Well, Elaine, I heard you say, can there be something added that noted that there is a savings? I don't really feel that we need to do that because there is going to be a savings.
Okay.
Right now, can I call on Judge Miller? Just a second.
I was going to suggest Chief Miller's been doing some work on this. So
I understand. Judge Miller, that's one department. Chief Miller, I guess all the Millers come up.
It's a swarm.
I don't remember I know there's three departments.
Prosecution.
Prosecution, okay. Yeah, Chad's up. He's not a Miller, but he's up, okay. Real quickly, start with the judge and then the chief, and then just a real quick recap. And you'll see where the savings is at in municipal court.
I don't know if I would call it savings yet. I would call it greater efficiency. Because we become more efficient does not necessarily mean we don't have other work that has not been completed that can now be completed. Until we put the system in place, I can't say we'll have this many fewer people or what. We will be more efficient without question, and what that opens up will be subject to our evaluation after it's employed. I was asked the same question last year, and I wish I could give a better answer, but I too do not have a crystal ball.
But you do have a person, how many people sit there and literally take those tickets and enter them in?
Well, we have different people do that function. I mean, there will be things that we do now that we won't have to do. There are things right now we're not getting done that we would be doing if we had more time and more people, or more people. When we have more time, some of those things, for instance, I mentioned to you the program of the state set-off. State set-off, by investing time into that process, we actually make money because of it. But much of that work is on hold right now because we don't have the resources to do it. If we had those resources available, we could be generating revenue that we're not currently generating, if that makes sense.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you. Chief Miller.
Well, I may have an option for you that will save you a couple $100,000. And that option is if we lease the equipment for 2014, we can probably cut that cost by 2/3, from $300,000 to $100,000. Might not even cost that much, depending. We lease the equipment, we do what needs to be done. I've reviewed this with the judge. I think we can save a considerable amount of money by leasing the equipment. There's no obligation on us if we go with the state's contract with Saltus Technologies, which is DigiTicket. We can lease the equipment. The software programs will populate full court, but I know they're changing to a different enterprise software program. So with that minor caveat on there, we know that it interfaces with full court. I have no reason to believe it won't interface with enterprise. So I think we can cut that cost by 2/3. To be perfectly honest, the priority in the police department is full staffing cars and then e-ticketing, but I understand that's not necessarily the priority of the other entities involved in this, prosecution and the court. So I worked with the staff diligently to try to come up with some ways to give you options. I think we can cut that cost by 2/3 by leasing the equipment. The other advantage of leasing the equipment is when version 2.0 comes out in 2 years or 3 years or whatever, we upgrade to the next version because we're leasing the we're leasing the equipment. So that's an option for you. So if you choose to adopt e-ticketing, you might be able to do that for an amount not to exceed $100,000.
And without a lot of elaboration, I agree with the chief that with it being a technological advance, us not being familiar with it, that leasing is the smarter way to go until we're convinced that this is the system we need.
Okay.
One thing you might ask is, well, what do we do if we don't like it? We have the lease agreement in such a manner that it's a month-to-month lease, and with the correct amount of notification, I think it's 60 days, we're out of the business. They take their equipment back, we're done.
Sounds good.
Awesome.
Chad?
As I said earlier, I think this process would save approximately 10 to 12 hours of staff time a week. We have an attorney that all he does is review tickets, and sometimes that's difficult to do, which is supported by a support staff person that's sorting the tickets. And then there's back and forth with the court and the police about, okay, what is this word? What does this mean? So again, it's a staff time savings that will free up other time to pursue other prosecution interests.
Okay, are we safe to say, put the 300 to 100,000 then?
I'm comfortable if you cut that from 300 to 100,000.
How about the city manager?
You're comfortable? You're very comfortable? You're okay?
I'm okay with 100,000. I know what the lease is gonna cost. The hard part about it is, what do we have to do with the technology upgrade to the software program and write the bridge either to the New World system or the full court or enterprise system? What's that gonna cost? We estimate that's about $45,000 or close to that.
So 150,000?
No, that's within his 100.
That's within my 100.
That's within your 100?
I think we can lease the equipment for $60,000 a year
Okay.
with the number of units to get this started. We don't need one for every person on the police department. I think we can do it with a certain number. 56, I think, is the number we have.
And Chief, we're piggybacking off the state?
We're piggybacking off the state contract with, we've already talked to the Highway Patrol. I already have the documentation from them. It's approximately $5,000 a month for leased equipment. That's $60,000 a year. If we put in, if there's a bridge write on the software, that may be another 40 or 50. So if you want to be really safe, I'm thinking 110 and would be all right.
110?
Yeah,
And other cities have already utilized that method
right.
through the Highway Patrol.
Okay, thank you. City manager?
Yes, Deputy Mayor. We're up.
Are you
we-
talking?
I was confirming, but we're very supportive of this move.
110?
Yes.
Okay, okay. Who made the motion? Karen? And I'll take my second.
I'm happy to amend the motion to 110.
Okay,
And you with the second. I would like to just have our IT director, Mr. Biswell, give us a quick comment. I do know that we got an extensive document from him encouraging us to do leasing on equipment. I'm learning that this is mostly equipment. And is this $45,000 work that your staff would do or that we would have to hire out?
Mark?
It would be hired out to the vendors to write the interface. So it'd either be the e-ticketing vendor, or in the case of New World, it'd be New World to write the interface. My guess is there's probably already an interface. It's just a matter of negotiating with the vendor what our cost would be.
And you think that this approach is a sound one for
Yes.
ticketing?
Yes, I
Thank you.
fully support it.
Thank you.
Okay, there's been a motion and a second. Is there any more discussion? Comments, discussion, questions, concerns? Mr. Mayor?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. In the past, it has been stated that with the e-ticketing, it would be possible, the officers are more efficient and therefore possibly can write more tickets, and therefore this is also a source of additional revenue. Do the TBT, do you disagree with that? And this is sort of not the big decision point on this, but I think it's just another point to keep in mind if that would be true.
2 points. One, other cities that have gone to e-ticketing have found the efficiency to be improved and the time it takes to write the ticket less. And in some cases, the revenue has gone up. Now, I want everybody to know that I'm very sensitive to the fact that we're not going to e-ticketing to write more tickets to generate more revenue. But the reality is it makes the ticket production more efficient and takes less time, inconveniences the citizen less, gets the computer systems populated, the tickets are readable, and so and that ease, sometimes there are more violations that could be written because it takes the time it takes to write them.
Thank you for stating it in that manner.
Your Honor.
He gave a good list, but he left one important component. It also gets the officer off the street and out of harm's way quicker.
That's true.
I appreciate the Millers working together. All right, there's been a motion and a second. All those in favor for e-ticketing, raise your right hand and continue to leave it up. And that's unanimous? Okay. Next one. Karen?
Add 300,000 in police cars, do that with cash, covering it with a line item transfer from police personnel. And I say it that way because I think using the term vacancy factor has just got to go away. But we do have to find a source for it.
Okay, city manager, before we move on this, I thought we were leasing cars, correct?
Deputy Mayor, thank you very much.
Every so many years?
The
or-
plan that was presented last year was for the first 30 cars, and it was a series of leases, well, a 3-year lease. The concept that was introduced by Chief Miller was that we needed to do the second tranche of cars, which is the next 30 cars.
And this is the next one?
Correct.
Okay. Continue on.
Oh,
I'm sorry, I just want to make sure I'm with you. Okay.
Yeah, at this point, I actually would rather, just so that I don't confuse the messaging, I'd rather have the chief outline it. But the concept was that we would do 3 tranches of cars. This is the second tranche.
But this is the second, that's
Yes.
where my, okay. Chief?
We have one lease that has the payments due in December of 13, 14, and 15. Those payments are made in arrears, meaning we pay at the end of the year. That's a recommendation of the procurement department. We have the first delivery of the first cars and they're being put out. We have to make that payment in December 13, 14, 15. We need a second lease because we need more cars. And the reason we need more cars is because there was a period of time when we didn't acquire cars in the interest of the economy and budget savings. We do a second lease. The payments will be due in arrears, again, same deal. We got an interest rate less than 1.5%. I think it's more like down like around 1.1%. I don't know what that would be now. I would defer to Jeff on that, and he probably can't guess, but it's a relatively low interest rate. We would then lease the cars and make the payments in 14, 15, and 16. But you're adding that up in your head, you're going, we got to already make a $300,000 payment in December of 14. Now we got to make a second $300,000 payment in December of 14, which is $600,000. That's true. The first $300,000 is already built into the budget in the contractual line item because the council's already obligated for that lease that's already under contract. This is a request to put $300,000 in there for a second lease. But since I'm in the business of trying to save money and help you, if you can keep the police department at full staffing and not cut the staff, keep the staffing at 300 officers, we might be able to generate the revenue, not generate the revenue, generate the salary savings in the same manner we're doing this year. That payment's due in December, but I have to come up with that money from salary savings from vacant positions. If you cut the police department, that cuts that. I know the 25 officer thing is still on your list. If you cut the police department, that cuts our ability to generate that savings. We are able to generate some of that savings because we're never completely staffed. We need 300 people to keep 275 on the payroll. So we're going to generate some savings. I think by the December of 2014, we could probably generate $300,000 in salary savings to make that first year payment of the second lease. But that means in 15, you got to put $600,000 in the budget for 16 because you're going to be obligated under 2 contracts. But we're pushing that off till 15 when we'd have a little better picture of what that is. But that's a way to do it. You put $300,000 in the budget already, authorized. You don't actually have to do anything at this point. We'll come to you with the second lease, and you'll tell me to generate that from salary savings, and I'll say okay, and we're down the road with 30 more cars. Using the same process we're using right now.
Okay, Karen?
My proposal was, I have 2 comments regarding that. My proposal was in cash for 2 reasons. I'm nervous about making forward commitments, and related to that, what we did with the fire trucks, for those who are around, we remember, for those who are new, was to kind of jumpstart getting the fleet refreshed by doing a 10-year lease on however many fire trucks it was, and then built into our capital plan paying cash after that to replace, so that eventually we would own all of them and the lease would have played out. The lease was done to jumpstart it. And so I imagine from what he said that the chief would think maybe it's too soon to switch to only $300,000 worth per year. My proposal was to switch to cash per year from here on out. I do think that we got in our supplement number 6 today, Councilwoman Schwartz had asked the staff to show there are 3 charts that show how much might be left in salary savings in each of the different departments based on their historical experience. That number, when it was adjusted for various factors, turned out, even as with the size of the police department, to only be a little bit over $300,000. So if we were to transfer out or commit that money, there's no extra to do anything else with in terms of a vacancy factor or whatever you want to call it. So this, if we were going to do something with that slippage, shrinkage they call it, this would be the only thing we could do, whether it's a lease or a purchase. So I would move the $300,000 for police cars in cash.
It's been motioned and second, and I think we already had a motion,
Did
didn't
we?
we? Karen?
No, there wasn't an official
Okay.
motion.
Yeah.
Elaine, it's been moved by Karen, seconded by Elaine. Any more discussion? Nathan?
On the, just so make sure I'm getting this correct, the initial $300,000 that's already in the budget, was for 30 cars. We're adding a second lease, so we're going to be getting 60 cars annually.
Going to get 30 more in 14, so we'd get 30 cars annually in 14, or 13 and 14. If we switch to purchase, 300,000 for purchase, and I think that's a good solution down the road, that'll only get us 10 cars because they're about $30,000 a copy. That's only going to get us 10 cars. We need 50 or 60 because of the condition of the fleet. 30 this time, 30 this year, 30 next year. Oh,
So I'm just trying to get this straight in my head. So by going with this second lease now, does this put us on a sustainable path?
yes.
And is this getting us caught up, or is this something that's, obviously we're gonna need to refresh cars every year at some level, but is that level going to go down in the future if we do this?
I believe so. This will get us caught up. This will move us toward catch-up. We actually shouldn't be in this position, but the reality is the economy is what the economy was, and we had to deal with it. So we have to try to rectify that in incremental steps rather than jump in and buy 100 new cars. We can't afford to do that. We can do 30 at a time, and I think that Councilmember Hiller's right. Eventually, we switch to cash and only buy so many, and I know I'm not speaking for Jeff, but he and I have had this discussion. Eventually, we need to shift to cash and just buy them and not lease them and pay interest. But to get caught up, this is a good incremental way to do that.
Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Mayor?
No, I'll just wait over there, city manager.
Oh, city manager.
Deputy Mayor, thank you very much. Thank you, Mayor. And I appreciate Chief Miller's comments there. This is important to get us caught up because we do have some challenges within the police fleet, and it's important to address this. We are working on a comprehensive fleet strategy, not just for police, but for the entire city, and it really addresses what do we need, how often do we use it, how do we deploy them, how do we replace them, all that. So that will be coming later, but I wanted to just add that on too. I think it's a more complete answer for what you're looking for, Councilmember Schmidt.
Thank you.
Thank you. Denise?
I guess I understand the need for the cars, and I've been supportive, as you know, Chief, and I guess it's more of a comment than a question. You know, I haven't done this a couple times now. We sit around and we do this, and we're adding money in now. So then what happens is we have several members who've indicated they don't want a mill levy increase. So then when we get down to, we've added this stuff in, you know, if you're gonna vote, you know, it's nice, because then these people can vote that they're adding cars, but if they don't vote for the mill levy increase and for the final budget, we're gonna be right back where we were at 2 in the morning last year and couldn't get a deal, so, yeah, just a comment.
I appreciate that comment.
Yeah.
City manager.
Deputy Mayor, and thank you, Councilmember Hart. One of the things that we talked about in this process is that if you did add something, you had to identify, are you willing to, there has to be that part of the conversation. Are we willing to raise the mill levy, or do we need to find other cuts within the organization? And thank you for that.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, there's been a motion on the floor. All those in favor, raise your right hand and raise them high. It's unanimously. Oh, I'm sorry. All those opposed, same sign. Okay. Are you good, Jenny?
And Madam Chairman, just to clarify, that motion was $300,000 in cash, is that correct?
Mhm.
Okay.
Is that correct? Karen?
Just for everyone, again, we are still working through votes at the committee level, so any of these can change, or obviously we need to all be keeping track of.
Correct. Let's move on.
Yep.
You're right.
Motion to add $75,000 for the downtown facade program.
Okay, there's a motion on the floor.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. for discussion? Any discussion?
Just-
Michelle?
Thank you, Madam. Just on Thursday, we had Maureen, which was a speaker that presented to the JADO board. And I really feel that it's very important to address some of the things that she discussed. One of the things that she talked about small business development is that right now the trend is that we have on a monthly basis the growth of 514 micro enterprises happening on a yearly basis, on a monthly basis as of the year 2012. The other thing that she mentioned that I think is very important for us to remember is the fact that she said, and she stated clearly, downtowns are the hub for these things to occur. What is very exciting about this fund, the $75,000, that I don't think that we really are understanding is that for every $1 that has been invested, we have gotten $9 back. For every $1, we're getting $9 back. We're not talking about just going ahead and adding money to something that is not going to give us any revenue. I don't know of any other program within our city that is doing that. However, I do feel very strongly that this is not youth and social services. We heard from a consultant that this is economic development. And if we are going to actually go ahead and make a vote on this, we have to look at where the funds are coming from. Is it important? It's absolutely important. Do we have to have these revenues available? Absolutely do we need these revenues. But these don't seem to be youth and social service funds. So would I like to see these added for promotion of, for purpose of discussion with the council? Absolutely. Do I feel that they fall under this category? I don't think so, because number one, $75,000 doesn't even seem enough for us to really make an impact. And the other thing is that it's important for us as a city as a whole, because this generates, A, the increase in the enterprise fees, because we would have buildings that are being rehabilitated that would now start paying electrical, gas, and the other services. And in addition to that, we're gonna create a hub for sales taxes to increase. With, in addition to that, having new businesses. So just something for us to consider and to keep in our minds.
Okay, thank you. Where will this money come from? Is that cash or the
Well, it
general
would be
fund?
cash from the general fund. I mean, it's obviously a standalone motion. And if someone has an alternate source, they can come up with that. But I think we need to make that commitment and figure out where the money's coming from.
Jeff, I don't know if you would know this answer, but how did DTI get in the guest transit?
I don't know the answer to that
Did
question.
you put it there?
I think they've been in that pool for years and years and years. I don't know how they got there originally.
Okay, all right. Nathan?
We're talking about them in the pool of the general grant fund, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And it's the general grant fund. I agree with Michelle that, and this was kind of the exercise that Karen went into, that we have these general grants that we're funding DTI and we're funding, JAAA and Boys and Girls Club out of the same fund. But that fund is the general grant fund. It's not the general social services fund. It is a general grant fund. And while it's kind of odd that DTI appears in there, and I think it's a very good idea to maybe create subcategories from there, we're not funding them out of social services funds. And I think that needs to be clear, that's the general grant fund. I also agree with Michelle on the idea that we need to continue funding this, particularly with downtown Topeka development coming online. I did the First Fridays thing last night and missed the bus, so I had to actually walk from Noto back to the bus station in order to get the vehicle. I had my two nieces with me, so I left them with their parents, and I walked back. And I walked through downtown last night at 9 o'clock in the evening, and there were signs of life. There was a concert going on out in front of the Celtic Fox on 8th Street, and there were actually a few people walking around, and it kind of got me excited about the idea that we're on the brink of actually developing something down there, and we're investing a lot of money in it. And I think it's important, a program like this that's going to give us more money back than we're putting in. It's an initial investment, but we're going to get more money back for it. So I would support that, adding that program back in, and I would also support the idea that maybe we need to look at creating some sort of subcategorization of these general grant funds.
Right, I appreciate that comment. Pam, do you have the history on why it was put there? No. No? Okay. I mean, there's a reason why. I'm sure they didn't just say, hey, let's just throw it over there. So I was just curious if anybody knew. Elaine?
Thank you.
Pam? I'm sorry?
I can tell you that it probably won't qualify for transient guest because of the restrictions on the transient guest use.
But is this the second year that it's been put in there, or this is the first year?
Oh, no, it's been in there for quite a few years.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, and I'm like, how did it get there? Okay. Elaine?
Well, that was my clarification, that it's not part of the transient guest tax fund, that it's coming out of the $75,000, that it's just general fund dollars, and it's not categorized with the social services grants. Is that what we're basically
Right.
voting on?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Karen?
Just to clarify the history,
Briefly.
The city, even last year, the city lumped many, not all, of the outside grants together. And last year, the same page that DTI was on also included the cemeteries and TPAC. So the staff has been systematically pulling the ones that aren't social services out, and somehow DTI was the only one left this year.
Okay, thank you. Elaine, or, excuse me, Michelle?
My question is, if it does not qualify for the transient guest tax, would this qualify under the half-cent sales tax? Because it's economic development.
I think the answer to that question, Pam, jump in if I'm wrong, is it does if the JADO board determines that it does.
Okay. Thank you.
All righty. Is there any other comments or questions, or Mr. Campos?
I'd just like to add a little context to the situation. We have to understand that downtown's about to go into redevelopment, okay? We're gonna do the infrastructure. For lack of better terminology, we're gonna have the Phoenix downtown. It's going to die for 2 years and then be reborn. So if we put this money in there, it's gonna sit there. And if you look at the contract, there's a 5% administrative fee that's on there. You got $37.50 that will not go towards the facade program. It will go towards administrative costs. The 6-member panel that dictates who gets these grants do not get paid. So where does that 5% go? We just kind of have to prioritize our needs versus our wants. We're seeing significant cuts from fire, police. I know it's only $75,000, but please understand the context. I do agree with Michelle that it needs to be higher at a certain point, but as of right now, this is a need versus a want. This is something I can't support.
Michelle?
Could I ask of Mr. Fry a question?
Sure. Is
Miss-
Mr. Fry here?
Mr. Fry is here.
Good morning, Mr. Fry.
Good morning.
Mr. Fry, thank you for being here today. I would like to see if it could be addressed. One of the comments that Mr. Campos just said is that it's gonna stop, the downtown is gonna cease for 2 years, and I wanted to receive some clarification on that. And further, if you could answer, have you had any groups interested right now in that $75,000 fund?
We have several people that are already asking for next year's funds. We were not able to fund everybody that asked for this year's funds. As I have stated before, we have several properties that have already been bought on Kansas Avenue, a lot of activity. Things will not stop in downtown for 2 years. In fact, things will gear up even more. We have so many activities going on, so much interest, and we are recruiting businesses right now that want to be there right now. And that's why this money is so vital, because you have invested money in the future of downtown, the private sector, and we will have a press conference next Wednesday to announce it. The private sector is stepping up with their money to invest in downtown. So this money is extremely important right now and into the future.
Thank you. All right. There's been a motion on the floor. It's been moved and seconded. Are we ready to vote? Let's vote. Okay. Did you? Okay. All those in favor that agree with Denise, raise your right hand. Raise them high. All those opposed? Same side. Thank you. 6-2. All right, let's move on.
5-2.
Um,
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't count your vote. You didn't have your vote.
Oh, I got this.
Sorry. Next item on my list was to add $100,000 for TPAC. This would possibly just be one time. Our new CEO is new, but to get them going, They've asked for 200, we have 100, and we have 94,000 in the budget now. So I would move to add $100,000 to T-PAC.
There's a motion on the floor. Is there a second? Is there a second? One more time. Is there a second? Seeing none, we'll move on.
Next item I have is to balance the transient guest tax fund. Got mine? All right. If anybody gets mine with the notes on it, send it back. I have 3 deductions. We did need to balance it. The group voted to move 120,000 and did not do corresponding adjustments to cover that at our prior meeting. Overall, we all got a letter from the Lodging Association, and I just need to say I was appalled. I'm very concerned that they do not understand what the transient guest tax is for, and that, so the top item on what you're getting from me is straight out of our Topeka Municipal Code. Thank you, Jenny, for helping with that. That identifies what that transient guest tax was intended for. It's intended certainly to contract with agencies, promote conventions and tourism, provide operation, maintenance, expansion, and development of city facilities connected with conventions and tourism, could cover municipal services, create related to recreation, even including police and fire though, create innovative projects and activities, promoting conventions and tourism, and to promote the general economic welfare of the city and its environs, including attractions of industry. It's very broad. The top priority should be making this city a great place to live and a great place that people here enjoy and that people want to visit and want to stay. And somehow the leadership of the current Visit Topeka has gotten that off track. That said, I've met the new executive director who's coming in, and I'm very confident that he can implement the true objectives of our transient guest tax ordinance. So it's with some mixed feelings that but I felt like I just had to say that. I think we've got a problem with our contractor right now. That's my opinion, of course. In terms of changing the transient guest tax to balance it, I would still leave the money with Visit Topeka and with the bid fund and challenge them with a proviso to agree that they will broaden that function. And you've got an example of what that proviso might be attached. We don't have to go into it today, but I think it's critical. So I would leave that the way it is. In order to balance, I have 3 items on the next page. I would delete the $50,000 from the Expo Center and refer them to Visit Topeka to fund out of either the bid fund or out of other funds that they have.
Okay,
We raised them over $1 million.
Let's just make those
Okay.
motions, and whatever HR decides to do, we can't direct him to do
Well, I
anything.
just want to explain to the council my rationale that the Expo Center's explanation to us was that they would spend that money on extra things that would help to bring in
Right.
those big new
Let's-
events.
Let's just take these one at a time, Karen.
Okay. I move that we delete the $50,000 for the Expo Center on the transient guest tax.
There's a motion on the floor. Is there a second? Nathan, discussion? Quick discussion? Mr. Mayor?
Thank you. Karen, you go back, you were saying that we need to, what is the purpose in doing this? You said to bring up the balance on transient guest tax. Is that the ending balance you're talking
The
about?
ending balance on transient guest tax, when we reviewed this the other day, the majority of this body agreed to move 120,000 extra money to the transfer to the Topeka for the zoo, to the city for the zoo. So we did not do we did not vote on any corresponding deductions to cover that $120,000. So
Thank you.
City manager.
these would cover that.
Yeah, just to clarify, that's not the totality of the motion that was
No.
considered. There's a total of $280,000 because the 160 additional to Heartland Park. So that only solves a bit of the problem.
I thought we only voted on the 120,000 transfer. Am I mistaken?
What did the color-coded charge tell us?
That would be a vote right here. It would be-
I'm sorry, I couldn't read.
Richard? Richard?
Which color?
Which one?
You've done a great job, Richard.
Here it is, the bottom of the first page.
So if I'm mistaken, I will,
Yep, it's on page 1 of 7 at the bottom, 720,
right. There was discussion of, Councilman Harmon proposed a variety of things, but I thought that the only vote that was taken was to move the $120,000. Now, maybe that's just because this is the general fund tracking sheet, so. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Okay, there's a motion, let's see, Mr. Mayor. Nathan, you seconded that. Okay, anybody else have any comments or discussion? Discussion? Okay, is a motion and a second on the floor. All those in, city manager?
We had a very significant conversation, substantial conversation about Heartland Park. And my recollection was that we had made a decision, or a recommendation at that night to include Heartland Park. If we go forward at this particular moment, it seems like it's getting left out. And that is something that we all expressed, and not you all expressed. I certainly made a comment that Heartland Park is very important to us, that we make sure that we manage that, since it is our obligation, and it is having some issues today. So I would ask that a determination be made as part of this conversation as to, do we support the increase of the Heartland Park by $160,000, which was part of Councilmember Harmon's initial recommendation and accepted.
I thought he bought that forward that Saturday.
That's
When,
what
or that Monday when he came in, I thought he bought that forward and we voted on that.
He did, well, it's not reflecting here that was voted on. That's not my recollection, but I certainly have to agree with the color-coded charts. Once it's in color, it doesn't change.
Well, this is just general fund,
Yeah.
though.
Okay, well, Harmon, you hold that thought, and we'll, after we finish with Karen's, we'll come back to you. Okay? Does that sound good enough? Unless you have a sheet that you want to hand us with that on there.
No, ma'am.
Okay, all right. I know. Okay, we're on page, okay, we have I'm sorry, Denise?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess I'm a little uncomfortable making changes to the transient guest tax, but I'm not really sure. I don't have a chart that shows me then what does go to the Expo Center. I know we're now pulling 50,000.
Well, Richard brought us some nice little sheets, some little handouts that Monday.
Well, we've got it in one of the reports.
And we'll find those little sheets for you. Do you have one, Jeff?
It's in supplement number 5.
Is there a page number? Oh, supplement number 5?
Supplement front page.
Oh, I have that.
And I have that in front of me, Madam Chair. I'm happy to read it to you if you have questions.
Well, or even if
I want to see if she has it in front of her so she can, Jesus. Number 5, there's 4. Okay, go ahead, Jeff, while I'm looking for mine.
So, Madam Chair, the Expo Center Marketing Transient Guest Tax Committee recommendation was $50,000. So this would eliminate that line item.
There you go.
So it would eliminate Expo altogether.
Correct.
Okay.
As a direct line item, it would not mean that they would not get funding through Visit Topeka, through the bid fund or otherwise.
Karen, we can't say that. We're not Visit Topeka.
I
We-
said it would not, though. It would
I
not
mean,
include that.
I know in the past, HR has come before us for advertising. So I know that he says he uses that 50 for that, so we can't say yay or nay. Has your question been answered, Denise? Are you good with that?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Are we ready to vote? We're losing Mr. Harmon here. Does HR happen to be here? I didn't see him. Okay, thank you. Nathan?
This is, deleting this 50,000, I think this is along the lines of what Councilperson Hiller was saying. This doesn't, we have to delete something out of that balance because we we've got a certain amount of money in the transient guest tax, and we decided there were $120,000 more of that. So this has to come out of somewhere, correct?
Yes.
The way I'm understanding that?
Yes. If I may, Councilwoman Ortiz, one of the things that's happened over the years, and we've gotten a bigger chart somewhere along the way, is that the council has tried to collapse making the dollars, and instead of making its own judgment and making direct grants to various organizations in the city, has funneled it all to Visit Topeka and the bid fund to let the tourism professionals make those decisions. And the way that the funding for Visit Topeka is set right now, it's what, $1,050,000 for their operating, which is used for purchasing, advertising, and it's not just all staff. They use that for marketing the city as well, and then $175,000 for the bid fund. If we wanted to make more certain that Expo Center, Heartland Park, TPAC got the customized marketing that they needed, we could do a little more in a proviso or even break out another line out of Visit Topeka as well. The challenge is in part with my motion is whether we're making that decision or whether our visitors bureau is making that decision.
Or we could subtract 50,000 from Visit Topeka and give it to the Expo Center, and that way he can do what he wants to with his money, whether it's advertising or bringing in or whatever. It's not a guarantee that Visit Topeka is going to help him and accommodate him in that aspect. Nathan?
Yeah, I just wanted to make clear that this 120,000, based on what we've already voted on, I mean, if you vote no on deleting these, we can't fund this out of, there's no raising the mill levy or anything to fund this. There has to be $120,000 of deletions made.
Mr. Harmon?
Thank you. If, I'm not trying to get ahead of us here, but I've also got an idea of the way that we can fund, for lack of a better word, that 120,000.
Okay, all right. Well, there's a motion and a second on the floor. So,
Well, if you've got a better idea, I'm fine to hear it.
Well, I'll just throw it out there.
well, wait, we got a motion on the floor.
Well, but if it would affect my
There's a
vote-
motion and a second on the floor, Karen. Either you can pull back your motion and the second can pull back his and we can hear that, but we need to vote on that. That's what's on the floor.
I'm always interested in hearing a better idea.
Well, you can pull it out. That doesn't mean you can't put it back out there, but do you want to pull it off the floor to hear it, or do you want to vote on it?
Guess we can pull it for the time being.
Okay,
We
second,
should have
Nathan?
discussion.
Nathan?
I'll withdraw the second.
Okay, so it's pulled, there's no motion on the floor, and I can correctly do that, correct, Chad?
Yes, Deputy.
All right. Now, do you want to continue on your list, or
I
do
would be
you want?
happy to defer to council.
Or do you want to come back? Why don't we finish this last one on your list, Karen? Wayfinding, or, let's finish your list.
Well-
And then we'll come back to that, because Richard's coming back with us anyway.
Okay, well, I had deleting 20,000 to TPAC for the same reasons. They've asked for marketing, that would defer it to Visit Topeka, that I also had a corresponding motion to fund them out of the general fund. So I would move to take 20,000 to TPAC out of there.
Okay, there's a motion on the floor. Is there a second? Is there a second?
People want
Is there a
it that way.
second? It fails for lack of second. Continue on.
And the third was to delete the 50,000 for the wayfinding signs. I absolutely support them, and I've gotten all sorts of industry feedback that they're important, including from the new director of Visit Topeka. But if this year the funds are too tight, I'm happy to take it out this year and begin to work on a plan for next year. So I would move to delete the 50,000 for the wayfinding.
There's a motion on the floor. There's a second by Mr. Campos. Discussion? Discussion? Comments? It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Raise your right hand high, please. All those opposed, same sign. And that was it 4-3? 5-3? 5 to 3, I'm sorry, okay. All right,
And if it's appropriate to make a motion that we do a proviso to visit Topeka, without specifics, just a motion that we do a proviso about their performance, I would like to make that motion now. That has come up before in discussions, and we can do that. We are the funder, so we do have the right to do that.
Chad, is this the appropriate time to do that?
Well, it's the committee, they can make whatever suggestions they want to the governing body in the budget discussions.
Is the body of a whole to do that, or?
Yeah, and you can, it's completely up to the committee whether you want to make that recommendation or not.
Are you saying the transit committee or the body as a whole?
The body as a whole.
Okay, all right. Nathan?
Second that.
Okay. There's a motion on the floor. It's been moved and second. Any discussion? Denise?
Well, there's a motion, but the motion is we put together some kind of proviso, and there's no wording of any proviso, so I'm not gonna vote on a proviso that I don't even know what it says.
That's right.
That doesn't make any sense to me. I mean, who's gonna come up with the proviso later, and are we gonna revisit it? So I'm gonna vote no because of the way this motion has been stated.
Appreciate your comments. Nathan?
I'm supporting that just because I think it's appropriate for us to provide a proviso. I realize that there are no specifics yet, but I think we're voting on the idea that we're giving this money and there are going to be some strings attached to it. And I'm voting in favor of attaching strings to it, or at least metrics that need to be met and evaluated.
Appreciate it. Mr. Harmon?
There's a proviso page attached to mine.
Right.
I did, but it said, it's may I, Madam?
Yes, you may. I'm sorry.
It's suggested, and I don't know if it's all of this or part of it because of the statement of the motion. And I would ask legal, I mean, isn't there some standards for motion, so there has to be some clarity? You don't just vote on a idea?
It's not a binding motion that the governing body is going to accept this. It's as I hear it, a motion as a recommendation to the governing body to add a proviso. Then the governing body can craft that proviso when they sit in their council meeting. Another option would be if the governing body wanted to make a suggestion to the policy and refer back to policy and finance to craft a proviso and then put it back in front of the body. There's several ways you can craft it. But as I heard the motion, it was just that there was going to be a recommendation to the governing body that there be a proviso. And then the governing body there's several different ways they can go about that being crafted.
All right. Any other comments or questions? I'm sorry, Elaine. The mayor's hitting me up here, so go ahead, Elaine.
One of my questions was, I thought we took $160,000 out of Visit Topeka to give to Heartland Park one time, and yet Karen said $1,050,000 was what their budget was in the transient guest tax fund that we have to
We're gonna
approve.
come back to that.
Okay.
After we go through these, we'll come back to that.
Okay, so that'll be clarified later.
Yeah, Richard's
Okay.
gonna come
Okay.
bring that.
Okay,
John?
thanks.
As a policymaker, you're only as good as the data you have in front of us. And right now, we don't have any data that shows whether or not they're performing, what tax revenue they're generating for us. Heck, we don't even have a count of how many heads they put on beds in the last year. So I would be in support of having an idea of setting a proviso for us. And then only question or reservation I have is when and where would we do that, Karen?
I'd be happy to, I mean, I put an outline, which I thought then people could look at and give some feedback. I'd be happy to work with staff to get something drafted.
Mr. Mayor.
And I want to clarify, we do receive I believe, quarterly report from Visit Topeka. And it doesn't answer all those specific questions, but we do they have a reporting mechanism. I think it goes through. We have a contract with each of these that we give funds to that comes through the finance department. But I just want to make you aware of that. Thanks.
I just personally think we need to be really careful because If we're gonna do it for them, who else are we gonna do it for? You know, are we gonna do it for everybody?
Proviso?
Yep.
We could if we feel like we need to. I mean, that's our responsibility.
To a point, Karen,
Mhm.
to a point,
I mean, if we're gonna give them the money, but we have some concerns,
to a point. If we don't see them doing their job, we don't give them no money.
it's an option.
That's how I've always been since I've been on this council.
Well, if we did that, we'd have to create another board or put it out for bid, which we could do.
Which we're looking at, but I just think, I don't know, anyway. Okay, there's a motion on the floor, and there's a second? Yes, Jenny? Proviso to visit Topeka as condition of funding. That's the way I understood it. Chad, is that correct?
Yes, Deputy Mayor, that's how I understood it.
Thank you. All those in favor for that motion, raise your right hand. All those opposed, same sign. All righty. Richard, can we swing back to you?
Sure. This was something I thought about as a way to address the $120,000 that we were to transfer to the general fund. And that would be to eliminate the $106,000 distribution to the Riverfront Park.
Did you give us a handout on that? No, I mean, that Monday, didn't you? No?
There was one, but that's not what I'm talking
Okay,
about
I'm
now.
sorry. Okay, continue on, please.
The way we have it now, we've got 106,000 going to Riverfront Park. So I would, the idea would be to delete that, and I think legally we can't we, Chad? We're not, I mean, we're obligated on Great Overland Station, but I don't think we're obligated on the Riverfront Park, are we?
I don't know off the top of my head. I would have to look at that Parks and Rec contract and see, but I don't know the answer to that question off the top of my head. I don't believe we are, but
Pam, do you have a question?
Yeah,
Or-
Mary and I talked about this after the last meeting when the transfer was done. You simply passed an action to fund, it's not tied to the charter ordinance for the 1%, as you did with Sunflower Soccer. You simply passed a resolution after the fact saying that additional amount of $200,000 would be paid, $94,000 to Great Overland Station and $106,000 to the Riverfront Park. You can legally change that motion because it wasn't in the charter. More easily, you could change the charter too, but it was our feeling that you could legally change that. It would be my recommendation, having talked to Great Overland Station. They did borrow the money to revamp the station, and that's where the $94,000 that you're giving them is to pay off that loan that they use for remodeling. But
Okay, but I thought the Great Overland Park Station is under the charter, correct?
it was not included in the charter that you raised the transient guest. It was passed, you passed the charter ordinance for the 1% increase. You did not tie that 1% to the Great Overland Station and the Riverfront Park in the charter ordinance. You did, after the fact, pass, and I can't remember if it was a resolution or an ordinance, but you did pass a document that said $200,000 would be given to the Great Overland Station and the Riverfront Park until they either got to a little over $2 million worth of value or they reached the end of 2015.
Okay. I don't, is that your motion, Richard?
Well.
Or are you trying to get clarification
I
before you
think
make?
we need, I think we need clarification from legal. I'm not trying to pull the funding to Great Overland Station for the $94,000.
No, I don't want to do that either.
That's not, I don't think there's any support of this council to do that.
Well, I don't know.
But I would like to know from legal at some point whether we could and how if we wanted to pull the 106 to the Riverfront Park, whether that could be done, whether it could be done in terms of a committee recommendation, whether we need to adopt another resolution, but to me, they're separate funding issues. So really, until we get that answer, probably the rest of my ideas probably needs to be deferred.
Okay, Chad?
Thank you, Deputy. Legal will be glad to look at that and get a memorandum out and communicate to whoever we need to communicate to in the next few days to know how we would need to go about doing that. We'd be glad to do that.
Okay. Mr. Harmon?
Thanks. And just to follow, what I was gonna recommend was we delete the $106,000 distribution to Riverfront Park and then pull the ending balance down to $4,000. But, excuse me, by $4,000, and that would equal, by 14,000. That would equal the 120. So that's how I was gonna get there.
Okay. Mr. Mayor?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. What we are doing is looking at how we disperse the 2014 transit guest tax funds, which is a sales tax, or rather, it's a tax on, of course, from the hotel occupancy. And it's always a question, we are now estimating how much the income will be. And I would like to ask either Jeff or Pam, what do we see as our ending balance in the transit guest tax for the end of this year? And how are our revenues coming in during this year? And then what is the expected revenues for next year? In the past, sometimes when we've had greater revenue come in during the year, at the beginning of the next year, we distribute that. And then, of course, during the recession, we actually had to lower how much we had contracted with them because the sales tax decreased. So this is one of those, we're rolling the dice. We're estimating how much money we have. We're making the decisions based on, in August, how much money will come in during the 2014 calendar year from the bed tax. So very possibly, you know, our decisions here are crucial, but yet it depends. It's a sales tax and what that income will be, and how are we doing this year? Is it looking better than we thought, or is it not as good as we would like it to be?
Madam Chair, let me answer two of those questions. We are projecting for 2030. Well, I'm sorry, we budgeted for 2013 to end the year with an ending fund balance of $165,000, which was a reduction in fund balance from the prior year of $445,000. And then we had presented a starting point for the committee discussions, which would have resulted in $2,430,000 in total expenditures, and projecting that would actually be $20,000 less than income for the year, which would have grown the fund balance back. Pam, I don't know if you have a 2013 estimate, or if you did that for the committee as part of your discussions, whether you have some sense of whether we're on track or not, and maybe something we need to follow up with the group on as well.
Thank you.
Karen?
Regarding those balances, there is a letter that there's some documentation that the Transient Guest Tax Committee had, because we asked some questions about the 2.1 million revenue figure. There's some document from the committee meeting as well as a later letter from Visit Topeka that really itemized their confidence with the projection. That might be helpful if the full council wants it. I'm concerned a little bit about the suggestion on Riverfront Park in that, and as everybody knows, I'm oriented toward cash. And if you're gonna use cash, then if you make a forward commitment to save money for something, you need to do it. And I think one of the reasons that cities end up bonding is because they can't trust themselves to keep those forward commitments. I see that the city attorney has stepped out, but besides the legal commitment that the city made to set the money aside in the first place, I believe we have some transfer commitments to the county where we promised them that we were going to continue putting the money in that fund for that park. And so that needs to be checked legally as well. Just throwing that out.
And he did say he would do that.
Well, he was talking about checking, I didn't know about the transfer documents. I just wanted to point out that that's another set of documents that reference this commitment that we made.
Okay.
So.
We don't have a motion on the floor, is that correct, Jenny? Okay. And that ends yours, is that correct? No?
No.
Okay.
There's really, they should be fairly quick. The next item on my list was under reconsiderations, was to look back at that retirement reserve. I'd like to add back the $500,000 just for this year. We were given a chart that shows that the need for, the projected need drops by about $1 million the 2 years after 2014. And I just hate to spend $330,000 of tax dollars to finance that rather than bite the bullet for the $500,000 this year and get it just covered. So I would move that we add back the $500,000 for the retirement reserve. I'm okay if nobody else wants to do it. That's on our colored sheet list that we voted on before. The staff recommendation was to borrow $5 million and to cover not only the shortfall for the retirement reserve in 2014, but to just kind of spread.
Okay, it looks like that was a 6-1, and it was a motion that we passed it, Karen?
Correct.
And you were the only one against it?
Correct.
So you want to bring it back to the table?
Mhm.
Okay, there's a motion on the floor. Is there a second? We did pass that. It's on page 2 of 7. Okay, there's a motion on the floor. Motion on the floor. Motion on the floor. Continue on.
Okay,
Seeing
social
the-
services already came up. The next one was, legal had talked about being willing to consolidate offices and thinking that there might be some savings, but that was sort of an undeveloped proposal. And I wanted to check and see whether that was possible in 2014 and what the net savings might be.
Yeah, we did present that item. We did identify it as an item that's included in 2014. Anything that was presented, I think we should assume we can deliver on.
Was there a dollar value on it?
It's $100,000.
Well, no. On page 213, well, okay, so just to clarify, we have two issues. One was the reorganization
Right.
Of the
of
staff.
Chad's department. We looked at that last week and we're fine on that. This goes one step further, which is, as I understand it, Councilmember Hiller, to basically consolidate, which Chad talked about briefly.
Right, physically consolidate.
Physically consolidate.
Right.
So we have an unfunded item on page 213 of the budget and the capital list. That would be the precursor to the move, which is fixing a sewer problem on the second floor of City Hall. Public Works estimate for that project is $243,800. That is not funded in the budget. And then the second half of your question is, would there be additional savings that would result from the consolidation? And I'll
Yes, there would, as, when I presented, there would be one FTE that would be eliminated from that consolidation. And to be clear, that sewer issue affects, I think, everybody on the second floor.
It does. It does. It's not just a legal issue.
Well, then I'm gonna move past that at this point, because if it's contingent on a $250,000 investment in the sewer issue, I'm not ready to do anything.
No, understood.
The next item I had was to ask, we did confirm last week that we have 10 police officers in the schools, so that's roughly $1 million worth of police officers in round numbers. We're getting, as I recall, about $336,000 from USD 501, and I wondered if we could ask 501 to contribute another couple $100,000 toward that safety.
Chief Miller, can you come comment on that? Because I thought they set their budget this week. That's what I heard too.
They pay us $336,000 a year for the equivalent of 4 officers in the high schools and an administrative fee. It's a partnership between the City of Topeka Police Department and USD 501. They do not pay the full load for police officers. It's a portion, so because it's a partnership. There may be, I did receive, let me rephrase, the contract with the school district is in the process of being renewed, but it's not finished yet.
Will the contract stay the same?
contract amount stayed the same with the availability in the contract to expand the program if we choose to, or we don't have to if we choose not to.
Okay. But with them setting their budget, I'm wondering if they're thinking the contract will stay the same.
They are thinking the contract will stay the same at this point. There's been no discussion to change that number.
Okay. Karen?
I would just, I'm not sure it's motion material, but given the size of that contract and the mutual benefit, if we could at least, I mean, if they're not gonna pay 100% of it, at least 50-50 would make a greater contribution and help us as a city in that partnership. I'd like to see that happen.
And I think we have to work into that, Karen.
That's fine.
Which we are slowly working into that.
I don't know if we've asked for money, though.
Oh, yes, we have.
Yeah?
It used to be grant funded, correct?
Yes, it was grant funded at one point.
When our SROs first started, it was grant funded.
Well, the SRO program,
Or
the
not
middle
that.
school SRO program has been a function of the city
Right.
for a long time.
Right.
There was a time.
But that was grant funded.
Right.
And
Well,
then the high schools
the
had
community
their,
policing officers were what was grant funded. The SROs, in the length of time I've been here, the SRO program has not been grant funded that I'm aware of. Could be further back than but
I thought that's how we started.
it could very well.
And then we had to take it over, after the grants are gone.
Yes,
then-
that's possible.
And then with the high schools, they had their own security people in there. But they felt like, well, there's things that they couldn't do that we could do, our police officers. Am I correct? Like arresting people and, cause I had this long discussion with some of the security guards at Topeka High.
Yes, actually, the function of USD 501's campus police department is the same as the function of the Topeka Police Department. They are under the state statute for a campus police department and are a fully functional police department. But our roles are different. We don't overlap. The officers are the school resource officers in the schools. They are part of the faculty. They put the police officers, the TPD officers, in non-confrontational contact with the citizens and students and faculty and family members. They work truancy in a collaboration with 501. So the two functions are both police officers, but the two functions of the police department, the TPD SRO program and the TSD, Topeka School District, function is different.
Right. And I think I want this council to know that, because I've asked Chief Miller, when school's not in session, and even prime times, I thought we had this discussion, when school is in session, that our officers are out driving around in our neighborhoods or helping. And I think that's very important, because I think what people believe is that they're just at the school, and then they think, well, they're just there from 8 to 3 o'clock or whatever. But they're driving around the school facilities looking for kids, and they've caught crime and different things. So I think they're very valuable. They don't just sit in the school.
A lot of people ask us, well, what are those SROs doing this summer when school's out? Well, we operate the youth camp, for one thing. We've operated 3 sessions of the youth camp this summer and had about 30 kids in each one, sponsored by the SROs. They also have to go to the conferences and so forth that the SRO program, that the NASRO, the National Association of School Resource Officer, holds in the summer. They also have other duties and responsibilities that keep them busy 40 hours a week all year. It's just their duties are directed to the schools during the school year and directed away from the school in other functions during the summers and Christmas break and vacations.
And you've also put them on the special unit team when we
Yes,
needed it.
yes.
Exactly. All right, thank you. Is that all the questions you have, Karen?
Yes, I mean, I guess it made my pitch. I'd still like to see us ask him for more money. Councilwoman Schwartz, did you have a question?
I'm
about
sorry.
this?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So I kind of want to better understand the $336,000 that we are getting from them. That's paying for 4 officers and an administrative fee. Do you know what that administrative fee is?
I'd have to add.
It's actually a total of 366, that's
Excuse me, can you come up to the microphone, please?
Yeah, it's not 336, it's 366. That's my error. I knew
That's
that.
okay.
I misstated that.
Thank you.
Gretchen
sweetie.
O'Donovan is our financial office, person who works there. Was what Amanda did, now it's done by Gretchen. She does a great job. She can
Thank
tell
you,
the
Gretchen,
numbers.
just so the people at home can hear you.
Okay, sorry.
Mhm.
It's 225,000 for salaries and 141,000 for administrative fees.
Okay, and 141,000 for administrative fees goes to the police department?
When it goes to the city.
Good.
The school district pays the city. We have 4 officers in the high schools, and we have 6 officers in the middle schools. The design of the 225 is to pay for the salaries of the officers. The administrative fee is to administer the entire program, which includes the SROs in the middle schools. 6 SROs, 125,000 for 6 SROs is not covering that program. It's only an administrative fee because the SRO program in the middle schools has been there a long time, and that was a police department funded responsibility. Dr. Singer, Kevin Singer, when he was here, Dr. Singer and I developed the plan to expand the program and have the school district pay us a portion of the operating cost. So that's why it's a partnership. It was never designed for them to pay the whole thing. We used to pay it all. Then they came forward and paid $366,000, and now it's a partnership.
And is there any movement towards, in other cities or police departments, that if campus police can do the same thing as the TPD can do, is there movement to stop doing the policing in schools and let campus police do that?
Well, the campus police department has a different function. They patrol the areas, they patrol the schools, they patrol the grounds, they have patrols on the second shift in the evening. They have other functions. It really is a different function, and the school resource officers from the local police department, and I know of many, many police departments and sheriff's offices that have SRO programs. Those are a function of the local police department and not the campus police of that school district. The functions are different. We don't secure the premises, check doors, patrol the area. It's the SRO program. The SROs become members of the faculty, teach programs in the schools, work school events, work directly with families, and the function of the SROs and the function of the school police department, campus police department are different.
Okay, thank you.
Is there any more discussion or questions? If not, there's a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
No,
I don't think there was a.
Oh, there wasn't a motion?
I raised the issue.
Okay.
And perhaps that's gotten it far enough. The only other,
Well, let's, I appreciate that, Karen, but we spent a lot of time on that. I thought you made a motion, or I would have cut it off and moved on.
well, I move that
Okay.
we direct staff to include adding money to the contract in their negotiations with 501.
Is that a motion?
Yes.
Is the motion on the floor? Is there a second? Is there a second? Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Okay, we've had discussion, so we don't need that. Okay. So moved and second, all in favor of, to direct staff to do,
To include, Jenny, what'd you get?
Direct staff to adding money in.
To include adding money in their discussions about the contract. That could be better phrased, I didn't have it. Nick?
well, it was your motion. Do you
It
know?
was.
Do you know what you made?
To direct staff to include the discussion of adding compensation to the city as part of their contract negotiations.
Does everybody understand the motion?
I think that's fair.
Yes.
Is that good?
I think that's fair, Gail.
Thanks, John.
I really do.
Yeah.
If we're gonna provide the officers, then they should also help provide the cash to pay for it.
I think you need to look deeper into to what we're getting out of it. Because we're getting our bang for our buck. Nathan?
The way I understand it, this motion is just to ask them to at least broach this subject.
Correct.
In negotiations.
Correct.
We're not making any demands on the school district.
nor a
provide
dollar
any
amount,
money.
just to add
Right.
that in the discussions.
Correct.
Okay, now I'm really lost. Denise?
Just a quick question, don't they do that anyway? I mean, isn't the topic of.
That's what the
how much-
contract's for.
It
Yeah.
sounds like they're not, from the chief's
Well,
report.
we're getting money in, so somebody must have said, how much money are you giving us? So it would appear to me that we're already doing that. Don't have a problem if this passes, but it sounds to me like somewhere, somebody's already negotiating a fee.
Well, I hope the one Miller would be doing that. Chad?
Yes, my assumption is in the contract negotiations, we're contracting and negotiating a fee for the service, so.
It didn't sound like it from Chief Miller.
Okay.
City manager, let's wrap all this
Yeah,
up.
maybe I can wrap this up. I'll tell you, I don't know what Ron's done. Generally, these are things that the chief does. These are things that generally handle the police department. I will engage. I guarantee you that we will engage in this conversation on this and every contract going forward.
Well, I think we pay the chief a good amount of salary to do his job, and that's one of his jobs, so. All those in favor of the motion, please raise your right hand. All those opposed? Did you get that, Jenny?
Yes, I have 3 to 5.
That's what I have too.
Okay. All right, is that the last of your,
That's the last of the ones that had to do with our general fund considerations. The other one, people can consider later. I know that others may have some issues. Thank you.
all right. We need to take a 5-minute break so we can wake up, walk around, and we'll resume in 5 minutes. This is what I'm going to do, because I have some members that are going to have to leave. They're not having any fun.
Well, we just passed over it. I mean, that's confusing. We removed to take no action.
Where's that one? Okay. So it's in, okay. Okay. City manager, okay. This is what we're gonna do. All of my yellows is things we just moved on, right? Okay. We're gonna go back real quick and we're going to consider all of the yellow. We're gonna do yellow. Right now, I will bring it up. I just want to say something, that's why I gave you a break. We're at a point where we're gonna have to make some critical decisions right now. We've already passed over this. We have every council member here except Councilman Manspeaker. It's tough, but the city manager and Jeff and staff, they need some direction. And we're just gonna have to bite the bullet. So I'm not gonna allow you to spend a whole lot of time on it. We've already been through it before, but I'm gonna move you right along. Let's start on page 2 of 7. It's the second, non-department elimination of non-union pay increases.
Deputy Mayor, if I could make a clarification on that.
Absolutely.
When we presented the initial information, this is going back to Jeff's comment at the beginning of this meeting, we had made a comment that you could achieve a $1.6 million savings if you didn't give the raise that is not a correct statement. You could achieve a $300,000 savings by doing this, so just to make sure we understand what we're talking about here.
$300,000, is that correct?
We need those sheets to get numbers.
300,000?
That's correct, ma'am.
Okay, all right, thank you. So what we're gonna need to do is, this is the toughest part of your job, right here. But it has to be done. So, let's get started. All right, non-department elimination of non-union pay increases. Do I hear a motion? We are going to vote each one of these up or down. We have to. So if I don't hear a motion, I'll make a motion. But we've got to start somewhere.
Well-
Either you're a yes or you're a no. Or yes, Mr. Harmon.
Well, I beg to differ somewhat. I mean, if there's no motion to delete it, then it stays in, is that correct?
Correct.
Oh,
I'll take that.
Yeah, so I don't,
We don't want it.
so if we don't do anything, it just stays in. So I don't think, well, that's my 2 cents worth.
City manager accepts those ground rules.
okay. So what you're saying is, if there's no motion, it just stays the way that it is. If there's a motion, the motion would be to vote to take it out. Or does everybody have that understanding? But we've got to do it. Nathan?
I was just gonna say, yeah, we could either do that or a motion to retain and just get it off the schedule.
Well, what we did was we passed because we didn't want to discuss it, so that's why I was going. No, we don't need to take time to talk about it. We need to get through it. I'm not gonna say that there shouldn't be no discussion, I'm just saying that we need to get through it, okay? All right, non-department elimination of non-union pay increases. Do I hear a motion? Once, twice, 3 times, move on. Non-department elimination outside agency funding. Do I hear a motion?
Your Honor?
Yes, Mr. Harmon.
Thank you. I would move to reduce the youth and social services funding by 15%.
Is that what this is? Was that correct? Just making sure we got all understanding. By 15%?
Correct.
15%? I would second that. Is there a second? Are you with us, Jeff?
I'm with you, ma'am.
Okay. And you heard the 15%? Okay. Is there, okay.
Can I ask what page we're on?
Okay, this is where we're going, right here, Elaine. Do you have this?
It's titled non-departmental eliminate
I got
outside
this, Karen, I
agency.
got it.
I can't find it.
I got it. Everybody there, right here.
Okay, we're at this. Thanks, Jack.
You put it in your book? Okay. You good?
Yeah.
Okay, now we're doing the yellows, okay? We're on the second yellow on page 2 of 7. You with me, Elaine?
Yes.
All right, great. Okay, there's been a motion on the floor. Is there a second? Jeff?
Sorry.
Did you second it?
No, I did not second it.
Okay.
Sorry.
I'll second it.
You'll second it, Elaine? Okay. It's been moved and seconded by Elaine. Jeff?
Madam Chair,
Discussion?
just to make sure we're on the same page, I calculate that 15% reduction to be on the $404,000 that remains in that budget from what was in the city manager's recommendation, which equates to $60,600.
This
Yeah.
reflects 479.
Wait, is that what you understand, Mr. Harmon?
No, I was looking at, this is what Karen had provided earlier, breaking down the social services into 3 categories: city services, contracted city functions, aging services shared with the county, and then youth and social services. Youth and social services would include Boys Big Brothers Big Sisters, Boys and Girls Club, Youth Development, Count on Me, CASA, Kansas Children's Service League, Family Resource Center, Marion Clinic, Positive Connections, Project Health Access, Successful Connections, TDC Learning Center, Topeka Youth Project, both the odds for youth, young adults, Youth Council, and YWCA Health Youth. It is that latter broad category that I moved the reduction of 15%.
Well, if you're going off Karen's sheet that she gave us today, is that what you're doing? No?
No,
Okay.
I'm going off a sheet that, Karen, you sent this to me back on July 26th, and I asked last week that it be distributed to the entire council.
And it was handed out on Saturday morning. What's the total in that?
It appears to be $202,428. $204,428.
I'm sorry, Richard, can you say that again? Okay, this is what I want. No, this is what I want. Did you get his clarification, Jeff?
I did, so the number is $30,664.
30,600.
That would be the impact of the reduction.
That's 15%.
That's 15%.
Can you repeat that number again?
$30,664.
And you got all of the entities that he was talking about?
Yeah, so I started with the 204,428 and multiplied that by 15%.
Right. You got it.
Denise?
If somebody could just read those off again, so I know exactly what entities are included in the cuts.
Mr. Harmon, can you do that, or would you want Jeff to do that?
I can do
I'm
it.
only asking you because you're making the motion.
Big Brothers Big Sisters, Boys and Girls Club, Youth Development, Boys and Girls Club, Count on Me Kid, CASA, Child in Need of Care, KCSL, Shawnee County Family Resource Center, Marion Clinic, Positive Connections, Project Health Access, Successful Connections, TDC Learning Center, Topeka Youth Project dash Jobs for Young Adults, Topeka Youth Project dash Youth Council, YWCA dash Health Youth.
So it's right here. From here to here. Okay, is everybody good on what we're doing? Everybody good on what we're doing? Okay, there's been a motion. Do I have a second, Jenny? Yes, and Elaine seconded. A motion? Okay. Any discussion? Quick discussion? Okay. All those in favor, raise your right hand. All those opposed, same sign. Did you get that, Jenny?
Yes.
All righty.
What was it?
6-2.
6-2.
What's the number again? 30,000?
30,664.
All right, let's go to page 3 of 7. Okay, police elimination of 25 FTEs. Right. Police elimination of 25, so this proposal, correct, is to eliminate 25 positions, is that correct?
Deputy Mayor, yes, it is.
Okay. Is there a motion on the floor? Mr. Harmon?
I will make that motion simply for the purpose of, just kind of seeing where the budget committee is and for the purpose of moving the budget process along.
So you're approving it?
I'm making the motion.
Okay. There's a motion on the floor. Is there a second? I will make that second if there's not. Is there a second? Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Discussion. Is there any discussion? Well, I'll have a little bit of discussion on this. This is just something we have to do. Last year, and I don't remember when, maybe April, May, the citizens were screaming that we didn't have enough police patrolling our areas. Chief came to us and asked this council for 15 officers. I asked that the council approve 20, and we have approved 20, which will be on the street in October. 19 in August. And the reason why I said 20 is because you have some that you lose, blah, 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 blah. So I wanted to make sure, we are already down officers. And so I think this will just put us in a position that is not a very good position. So that's, because I think we need to be fully staffed. Their response time is slow. And I think our constituents have made that loud and clear. So having said that, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any more discussion? So I'm not going to support this, but Denise?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I would agree with what you said about the concern, and if anybody's read the paper lately, crime is certainly hitting us again, and I know that the police are working diligently to control it, and they are just now getting back up to where they need to be, so I will not support this. I think it's not what the people in my district want. In fact, they're very concerned to see more community officers in their neighborhoods, so I'm not going to support this.
And I echo
Michelle?
the comments. Every time that I went door to door, all I heard was public safety, infrastructure, economic development, and a big concern is public safety. I just can't vote for this.
All right. It's been moved and seconded. Any more? City Manager?
Yeah, Deputy Mayor, if I could ask for a clarification. When you take this action, you say we do not support the elimination of these jobs. Are we also understanding that we are at that time also saying that this will be addressed through a mill levy increase?
We are now. Thank you.
I'm sorry, we are.
We are
that.
now. You've made
Okay,
us
thank
aware
you.
of that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Karen?
I'm not gonna support it either, and just to point out something that the chief touched on earlier, he and I, a lot of us have been hammering back and forth, where are these 300 officers and what are they doing? Truthfully, at full staffing of 300, what we actually have is 275, because there will always be 25 in transition with retirements and training, and that is essential to keep the department fresh, but it takes 18 months to get an officer fully up. And so just in terms of the context of what we voted to fill last year and what we need to sustain. Thank you.
Denise? Okay. I'm sorry, Elaine?
Okay.
I'm sorry, I'm going nuts.
That's okay. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I support not decreasing our police force, but I do not want to support that we keep giving raises and keep giving more money in our city coffers. And that is what my district is telling me, that the city has got to control the spending. And that's why I asked for what would we get if we froze positions for a year, and the answer was $1.5 million. Everybody else has been doing that through this recession, and the city has failed to do that. So I will support not decreasing our police force, but I will not support the union contracts and other raises that come along with the budget.
Thank you. All right. All right, the motion is to eliminate 25 full-time police officers. All those in favor of the motion, raise your hand. All those opposed, same sign.
I'm not voting.
All those abstaining? Six one one, is that correct?
Yes, 6 against, 24 and abstain.
Okay. Next one is fire elimination of 21 full-time firefighters. Mr. Harmon?
I would make the motion for the purpose of keeping the budget process moving forward.
Okay. Is there a second? Is there a second? Elaine? Okay. Is there discussion? Denise?
Well, I think if you're gonna make that motion, you ought to make the motion then not to open the Fire Station 13, because, that is on the west side. There's no way they're gonna staff it as it is currently. I think you have to think about that. If you try, the fire department is barely, I mean, functioning now with overtime and things, so if you're gonna eliminate FTEs from the fire department, then it would be ridiculous to think we're gonna open another station. And if the people on the west side don't want another station, and they don't wanna pay for the people to staff it, they should be upfront and say so. That's my comment.
It's a good comment. City Manager, I had asked you before, when will Station 13 be done?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
I think that's very important in this decision.
We anticipate, I'll certainly invite Chief Bailey, who, if he wants to come and join into this conversation. It's anticipated that Fire Station 13 will be done in the fall of 2014. So just, I know there's dates have gone around, but probably October, September, October timeframe would be a reasonable time that it should be open.
Okay, September, October. Okay, all right.
So I'm sorry.
No, go ahead,
Can I
continue. Yes, continue,
I
please.
appreciate Councilmember Everhart's comments. For sake of this discussion and clarification of the issues, I think that it would be highly valuable to this group if we really considered those two items separately. Number one, I agree with you. Number one would be, do we want to cut the 21 firefighters, or do we want to increase the mill levy to cover that? I think a second discussion is there is a request that's been being discussed by the chief, and I think most of you have heard from people on this, that they're looking to increase by 2 companies to fill Fire Station 13. I think that's a conversation that has to be had, and I don't think it's the same conversation. Cutting the 21 firefighters that is on this list is really a matter of budget and numbers, and really impacts service as it exists today.
Not
Talking
the
about
station.
Fire Station 13 is another item, and the way that the conversation flows is that when the decision was made to construct 13 and 14, it was based on a deployment study, and I don't want to get into who supported or not, value or not value. It was based on a deployment study that contemplated, for purposes of deploying other firefighters that were at other stations, 3 and 6 particularly, and relocating them to the station. So if there's a conversation about Fire Station 13 and going forward with it, I think there has to be a conversation, how are we going to staff it? Are we going to relocate firefighters from 2 existing stations, or are we gonna hire 2 new crews plus a running chief? And that's a separate and very important conversation. I will tell you, as a city manager, I will not be in too big of a hurry to begin construction on Fire Station 13 unless we know how we're going to staff it going forward.
Correct, correct. Excuse me, Elaine. I'm looking at Denise.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I guess maybe to educate the newbies and the people at home, and I am on the west side, I don't remember anything to vote on, that we voted on a new fire station being on the west side, but where exactly is the station located? And my second question was, has it begun construction, and how was the west side garnered information that they wanted the station?
Well, the station is at 6th and
Roughly 6 in Fairlawn.
6th and Fairlawn. It's kind of closer to security benefit. Okay, we had a study done that says there's not a station in District 9, and we had a study done that says because of our response time, there needs to be a station there and also out south. I'll be happy to give you a copy of that Bible, so you can read it, so you can get up to speed to see what that study said. Let's see, that was one of your questions. The other question was that's how we found out that we needed it.
Through a study?
Through a study.
Okay, so the constituents weren't asked if they wanted another station, it was through a study?
Oh, they want it, I believe, correct? Richard, that's your district. You know, I just cringe when I hear that there's not a fire station in District 9. There's not one there.
Okay.
And I just cringe because that takes away from other areas, and that the response time doubles. and it all says that in that study. You can get with the chief and he can school you on that very quickly, but, what was your other question? Oh, was that the two questions?
construction, whether it has
Now, the
started.
construction, I don't know. Jim, do you know? I don't know where he went.
What is the
Do
question?
you know when construction's set to?
To begin?
Mm-hmm.
Do you know when we're scheduled to start that?
Yes.
I know it's been approved to go out for bids, so
Mhm.
I don't believe the bids have not been received for the fire station yet, but it's in the process of being bid at this time, and the drawings and plans are complete. So, if that answers your question.
Yeah, to the best that you can.
And is there any other district that does not have a fire station?
It's not another district that does not have a station, but we
15.
do have a large void in the south area of Topeka, where Mars, Bimbo Bakery, that area, our response times more than double what our average response times are for that area.
But I believe our fire station is at, in
Station.
Nathan's district, which is Fairlawn, and, before you get to 29th. In District 7, where's our fire station in District 7?
With District 7 boundaries again, I'm sorry.
Well, if we go up to Marlboro Road, which is not including Urish, and that's where the
Okay.
township fire station is, but District 7 also does not have a fire station.
Fire Station 8 and Fire Station 12. Fire Station 12 is at 21st and Urish. Fire Station 8 is at 2700 block of Southwest Fairlawn. But as we start to look at covering south of Topeka, Fire Station number 10, just east of 37th and Burlingame, Fire Station number 5 at 21st and Western, and Fire Station number 9, which is just east of California, are the companies that start running south, so.
So are there districts on the city council that have more than one fire station?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Okay.
To more specifically answer the construction, and I respect what Mr. Whitmore shared, but I think we're looking at around October. Again, without making commitment, I know the bids are out, but that's what, we kind of have a tentative.
That's when it's supposed to be completed.
No, starting, I'm talking about, I thought the question was starting
Starting, yeah.
construction.
Okay, because that's not what I understood. I thought, okay.
Now, completion is what we're talking about, late summer, early fall of next year is the anticipated
Oh, okay.
completion.
Okay, okay. Okay. Mr. Campos, did you have your hand up?
Though it's been framed that the conversations need to be kept in silos, lack of better terminology, they are interconnected. You know, we're gonna have to readdress this next year. You know, we're gonna have to figure out where the two companies are gonna come from. You know, we wanna keep the mill levy at a moderate increase for this year, but if we're gonna have to increase it by 7, 8 next year, just to cover those two companies, and then we have to take into consideration the apparatuses that we're gonna need for those stations, not including 13, but also 14 and
13 and 14.
Don't we have something for 15 also?
No, it's actually 13 and 14. 14 is being looked at in the CIP for 15.
These are the people, you have a heart attack, they're your first responders. You have a stroke, they're your first responders. Topeka is a baby boomer generation city. It's maturing like fine wine. We have to make sure that we have the protection necessary, both on police and fire, to address the most basic and fundamental needs of every constituent in this city, just not in District 9 or District 7. Every single soul in this city is important. We need to make sure that we're addressing that both on the budgetary side and on the practical side. This is something I do not support. We can't eliminate them. But what we do need to have is foresight going into the future years and making sure that we have the cadets necessary to do the job that is needed.
Nathan?
I think it's also important, and this ties in with the last discussion, that we can't keep saying things like, we don't want to eliminate people, but we don't want to give them raises, we don't want to increase spending in some of these areas. Those are not options that we have. We have 300 FTEs in the police department, and we have a rolling flux of about 25 of them If we don't give raises, that rolling flux is going to be more like 50 or 75. And that's how we got into this situation in the first place, is you can't ask people to risk their lives and then not give them raises. That's not an option. We can't live in a fantasy world where we come out and say, hey, we're not gonna give them a 1.5% raise.
Well, they're under contract though, Nathan.
They are under contract, but we just spoke about the idea that we want to cut costs, but we don't want to cut any people. Well, that's not fair to those people. That's not a realistic possibility. We can't do that. It sounds good. Everybody would love to. I'd love to be able to fund 300 police officers for $100,000, but we can't do that. That's not how it works. And I think that needs to be clear when we vote on particularly these two items.
And I think that we go again back to the same discussion of what did we hear and what are we hearing on the streets that our constituents want? Our constituents want public safety. Public safety includes our firefighters and includes our police officers. If our constituents are asking us for public safety, I think that they're telling us that they will tolerate, even though we don't want that increase, and even though they don't want that increase, everybody has to have an understanding that the money has to come from somewhere. And here is where the mill levy becomes an issue, like city manager just said. So we have to be very cognizant that we're not doing this lightly, but if we want the services, we have to find a way to fund them. So here is where the mill levy, again, is something that we would have to consider with mill levy increase.
Okay, there's a motion, right, Jenny?
Sorry?
There's a motion?
Yes.
And a second?
Yes.
Okay. All those in favor for the elimination of the 21 full-time employees with the fire department, raise your right hand. All those opposed, same sign. What is that? 6?
6, yes, one abstain.
Okay. All those abstentions, same sign. Okay, Jenny, is that 601?
Yes.
601, okay. All right, let's go to page 4 of 7. Public Works. Public Works Elimination 1 Plan Review. FTE. Yes.
Deputy Mayor, sorry, before we jump too far away from that, it would be helpful to the city manager if there was a discussion pertaining to the staffing of Fire Station 13. Right now, it would be very easy for us to say, well, we can redeploy one company from Fire Station 3 to manage Fire Station 13 during fiscal year 14. But then that's not a sustainable long-term plan. So I would feel uncomfortable initiating construction on Fire Station 13 until I had a level of confidence as to whether we were going to reallocate staffing from other locations.
Well, what I would suggest is, if it's going to be done, I mean, when is it going to be built and done, ready? If it's gonna be like September or October, those are just a few months. I would suggest that we move some people around to staff it and then put it in the following budget.
Okay.
But if it's gonna be done earlier, you know, let's say it's gonna be done April, May, yeah, I just don't know when it's gonna be completed. Do you have any idea?
Well, I have a high level of confidence that it's going to be based on any other construction schedule that we would look at. So I have certitude that it would be done in.
Because he said,
What's up?
It's like October to October.
Yeah, October is what we said.
Starting October 13, finished October 14.
Correct. That's what I said. That it would be finished and ready for occupancy in October of 14, of fiscal year 14, so that we would be looking at a 3-month period that we would use a deployment study. I get that, we can do that, but the question is, once you build it, you have to staff it. Is it going to be staffed by a redeployment of people, or is it going to be staffed by new people? I just want you all to be aware that is if we decide to go forward, I'm okay with that.
So you're saying it'll be through in October?
Of 2014, based on the
Okay.
information provided by the fire chief.
Okay, if it's done in October, we have even October, November, December, that's 3 months. I think we could move a company over there to get by,
Correct.
to save money, and then fully staff it in 2015.
If that is a decision that this council wants to take on, and the only reason I'm bringing this up is that when the decision was made to construct 13 and 14, my understanding, my history studying it, is it was made based on a redeployment of people. So I think that only because the conversation's out there today.
Well, let me say this, a redeployment of people. You have one chief that said, yes, I agree with that. You got another chief that says, no, I don't agree with that. It has to be fully staffed, we can't do it with the people that we have now. I think we could do it for a short period of time, but not a long-term.
And that is a significant, Deputy Mayor, I'm sorry, and I'm not taking a position here. That is a significant budget impact on 2015, 2016 that you're sort of making today. So I'm okay with I'm okay with passing on the subject and going forward. I just think as a city manager, I think it's imperative that I outline that there's an issue here that is going to come back to visit us later, and I like petting them as opposed to them biting me when it happens.
I appreciate it.
City manager, thank you, Madam Chair. City manager, is it my understanding that there was a plan developed by the fire station stating that the Station 13 would be staffed by members of Station 3?
Yeah, Deputy Mayor and Councilmember DeLisa, if you don't mind, I don't like talking about things I wasn't around, and I have to say that there's a lot of different information, and I think everybody's intentions are good, but I think people perceived it differently. I think the more important issue is that as the governing body of this city, we just have to, however the decisions were made in the past, it doesn't matter. The decision is fairly simple for you all today.
Well, let me say that. That was in that study, but also the study said to take Fire Station 6 in Oakland and move it further east, okay? A study is good, it's great, but you gotta tweak it from what works for us, you know? And we don't need to move Fire Station 6 further east. There's no growth out there. So we need to just leave that. You know, we can do that. And I think we could temporarily maybe do that, just move some people over there from 3s. But then you gotta look at, we're redeveloping downtown, all the people that work down there. These guys go on all these calls for the high rises and blah, 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 blah. That's why I say temporary and then fully staff it in 2015.
And the reason that I bring this up is that my concern is, after speaking with the chief, if I'm incorrect, please correct me, is $2 million for 2015. Am I correct, Chief?
1.9.
2 million, yes.
Yes.
Which is equivalent to 2 mills. So, I mean, this body, we're talking about and this is why I'm having this discussion, because again, we're talking about the impact in public safety, and we're talking about the impact this is having on our taxes, which our constituents are telling us, don't do this. So we're saying in this body that at the same time that we're looking for ways of doing efficiencies, we are consciously saying that we're going to increase in the 2015 budget an additional 2 mil. Okay? Just wanted to clarify. Oh, sorry.
Elaine.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Have the studies, and I know cities change, they go up in population, they decrease in population. Have we found out and you know, I just found out today I have no fire station in District 7. 21st and Urish is not in my district. So have we done any studies that show where the population is moving, which a lot of it is moving out southwest? Do we need all the fire stations in all the districts we have, especially those that have more than one fire station?
Well, yes, I feel we do, but I'll let the chief answer that. But you do know that Mars has agreed to build a fire station out south with their development out there, and that's part of their contract. So that will be that will be that. But what that study looked at, Elaine, was all the growth on Wanamaker. That's what that study did. It looked at that. We've gotten the grounds free. We have so much time to build on it. You can get with the chief and he can fill you in on all that.
So have we looked at, I mean, I know in other cities they have, fire stations have closed because of the population degrowth, in that, if that's a word, and they've moved them to newer parts of the cities that are growing. So have we had a study that has done that?
We haven't had a study to my knowledge. Chief, you want to answer that? But we're going to have the same problem that we have right now.
Right.
The double response time if we do that.
And I think, Councilwoman Schwartz, you were here on the 22nd, I believe, when we came back in the document that I handed out at that time. If you look at page 4, you'll see the total call volumes. I didn't hand out, I know Councilmember Harmon is gone, but I didn't hand out a new document. It's the one that we handed out before that cover looked like this. And on page 4, it showed the average runs. I actually had brought it up for emphasizing fiscal year 13 and 12, year to date for 13 and then for 2012, but it actually went all the way back to 2003, and it shows the call volumes of our companies. And where we have overlap, if you will, of fire companies, as what you're alluding to, is based on density. It's not just because we wanted to have additional fire stations there, is because that's what we identified as a need, is what has been identified as a need for calls. And when we showed Station 13, which it was referenced on page 6, and I acknowledged at that time it's not a scientific study, but it's based on the same variables that we use to capture our estimated runs. It showed that in 2012, we estimated that just one company out to Station 13 would have run about 2,700 calls, and year to date about 1,300 calls. I think the purpose of that was just to kind of show we're kind of robbing Peter to pay Paul when we do the short-term relocation of our assets right now. Just if I can, to try to articulate what I think the big issue is, as I've had discussions with the city manager and some council members, I don't think there's a lot of contention, or I don't think it's really that arbitrary as to whether or not we need to staff Station 13 or 14. I think it's how do you make that happen dollar-wise. And I think what we're trying to do is cost average it out so that we don't get out of a pickle per se this year, with the budget process, and then turn right around in 15, going into 15, and have this same issue again, and the same issue again in 16. So I think that's the big issue is when do we kind of earmark, for lack of a better term, those dollars to help us afford the resources that we believe we're going to need.
Thank you. Can I ask where Engine 6 is? It had only 1,000 calls compared to in the station that would have Engine 7 is 2,700 calls last year, and Engine 6 is 1,000 calls.
Engine 6 for,
On that same page that you're on, page 4.
Engine 6 had 1,017
17.
calls in 2012,
Right.
and year-to-date, 549 calls.
Right, and then Engine 7 had 2,700 calls in 2012.
Correct. And you said where is
Yeah,
Engine
where are
6?
those- yeah, where are
Engine
those?
6 is on Seward Avenue.
It's in Oakland.
It's in the Oakland area.
Okay.
I don't know if you're familiar with that. And Engine 7 is at 1215 Oakley. I don't remember exactly what that area is called, but
Westport. Westboro.
Westboro, yes,
Yeah,
Westboro.
I thought it was-
So Westboro had quite a few more calls than
Yes.
Oakland. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
But they have more calls because they're of the area that they have to cover to go out west.
And see, Station 7
Wanamaker.
at 1215 Oakley, currently, that is one of the first-in companies for the area that we were looking at building Fire Station 13. And I
right.
think most of us in our community remember
Right.
we had the big fire at WIBW earlier this year, and it's no shortcut to 5800 block of Southwest 6th from that area.
Right. Karen?
Well, for Councilwoman Schwartz, there is a study that you can get. The study was done in what, 2005?
2006, I believe.
2006. And it shows the concentric circles of the service areas. It's not done by council district. It's done by population and where the properties are. And it really is pretty fascinating to look at. So I would recommend it. If I have it correctly, though, overall, the idea, as someone mentioned earlier, was to relocate. That study suggested relocating the company from Station 3, which is where the fire department's headquarters is on 4th Street, out to 13. And the concern has been because there are so many genuine fire calls in that center part of the city where companies need to cover one another, is that wise, and where we want so much more growth downtown, and we're expecting it, we're not just talking about it. Is that a wise thing to do? So we do need to deal with that. All due respect to finance and the city manager, however, we're in budget today, and any of those costs were not built into this budget, so we don't have anything on the table to consider regarding starting to staff up for Station 13. I'm going to use some round numbers similar to what Chief Miller has talked about. Realistically, the firefighters come on brand new and have to be trained as well, so we're not talking about just hiring folks on and having them start fighting fires in a week. So realistically, a 15-month front-end time to get people hired on and actually be ready to be a fully functioned fire company is far more realistic than talking about, waiting 3 months and getting them on. So to me, from listening to this discussion, we've just got 2 decisions to make. I mean, if we do nothing and the fire station is built, the bids are let, and it's built this fall and is ready in fall of 13, realistically, we're going to have to redeploy station number 3 to cover station 13 for about 15 months anyway, just because even if we hired new firefighters, they wouldn't be ready. So we can either, we'd have to add money to this budget in order to start acquiring fire trucks and firefighters to be ready to staff that station themselves. Otherwise, we postpone a year building the fire station and get the money in the budget and get the firefighters hired if we want to keep Fire Station 3 open and fully staff 13. Am I missing something here? I mean, we didn't have any proposed money in this budget at all to start to staff up 13.
Greg, you want to respond to that?
Well, I appreciate how Councilwoman Hillis has tried to capture this, but it's not exactly right. It won't take us. It won't take us that long a time to transition our people. Our new firefighters hiring on. The last thing we'll do is put an entirely new set of people in that predicament. So we merge our new people with some of our more senior, more experienced people, and we're able to realize our objectives a lot faster.
So what's the turnaround time from hiring a increasing that many people? What's the turnaround time?
Ideally for us, what we would like to see is about a 9-week process for a new hire to be hired on and then be ready to enter into the company. But understanding that new person is the most junior person, the neophyte, if you will, and they're going to be stationed with more experienced and more senior people, and we're going to make sure, my number one mission, our number one mission is to ensure every one of our firefighters go home safely the next day. So we're not going to put them in a predicament with new people. It's a little bit different than it is for the police. But if we could get 9 weeks for that new recruit to learn all the things they need to do to get out and start. I think the other thing that it's not only the fire calls, but remember in our initial presentation, we shared that our EMS calls are 75%, nearly 75% of our calls now. So seconds are even that much more critical. We're not only talking about the incipient phases of a fire, but we're talking about that golden hour when we have, traumatic situations or cardiac arrest, et cetera. So.
Yep, thank you. Mr. Mayor, did you want to respond?
No, that was my point.
Okay.
Either way, there's no money in this budget. That wasn't proposed by.
I think that's what Jim's asking us. What do we want to do?
Yeah.
And I think Jim could find it. Mr. Campos?
Is it possible for us to build in a percentage of that cost into this budget just to help offset the mill increase that we're going to see in 2015?
Deputy Mayor and Councilmember Campos, if we did, we'd have to identify where we're gonna cut elsewhere, or whether we'd have to increase the mill levy. I mean,
Right.
the budget is being set. I just wanna clarify what I've said. I'm not saying that this has an impact on the 2014 budget. I'm saying that we're making a decision that's going to have a very substantial impact on the 2015 budget. So, as the chief put it very eloquently, we're working very diligently to climb out of a hole right now. Let's not fall into the next one. Whether we redeploy or whether we hire, from a city manager perspective, I can support either of those decisions. I can see the value of either of those decisions. But because of how we decide things as a governmental entity, you need to just be aware of what's coming forward.
It would be my position to make sure that not, of course, we're addressing 2014, but 2014 is just as linked to 2015, 2016. I don't want to come back a year later and have this same discussion if we can offset some of that now. Yes, we'll have to identify further cuts, and I guarantee some of the members of this body will on the night up. But also, we also have to address that, including a mill raise. We're at that point right now. People don't like their taxes increased, but we're talking about lives now.
Deputy Mayor, if I could ask a question of the chief. Chief, I was out of the room for a minute. Did you comment as to what the cost would be for the additional 2 companies plus the running chief?
I did not include a running chief, but if we looked at half a year, which we're talking less than half a year, and
Chief, if you could just let's just limit it to 2015, so.
Oh,
for a whole
2015,
year.
for 2 companies, it would be about $1.9 million. Just a little less than 2 mills, if you want to talk in terms of mills.
When you say 2 companies, that's one station. It confuses us.
One
your
station, yes,
words.
one station, a company, an engine company, easy way to remember that, or a pumper company, it has the tank, it has the water on it. A truck company does not. It has the personnel, it has the salvage, overhaul equipment, et cetera. So 2 companies, an engine and a truck company, would be a $1.9 million.
Okay.
Yes.
One question, what about, and that includes the equipment? Is that?
That does not include the apparatus.
Okay, that's personnel only.
That's personnel only.
So we also, then we have the equipment.
I'm sorry?
Then we would have the equipment.
We would have a need to get the equipment, the apparatus as well, which
Okay.
I'm confident that we can do that if we are able to continue to maintain our vehicle replacement plan that we currently have and we're operating from. That would afford us opportunity to realize the equipment offset it if we're able to maintain that program as it exists today.
Okay, so, but if we did, it'd be a one-time, that would be the one-time cost, that's one, whatever we had to do that, but you're saying that we wouldn't have to have additional sums, with our purchasing plan right now, we will be making additional equipment purchases of apparatus so that we can.
I'm gonna ask Fire Marshal Moody to just kind of speak
All
to
right.
that vehicle, just the vehicle replacement plan. Okay. Let's share.
In addition to our ongoing replacement plan, that's to keep our frontline apparatus in operational condition and reliable, and operating cost as reasonable and efficient as possible. We wouldn't, on a temporary basis from our reserve apparatus, we could staff that station. But I believe our plan we looked at, including new apparatus in a CIP proposal for either 14 or 15 for some additional apparatus to be staffed in that station.
Cost?
Dollar cost. A pumper is in the $500,000 to $600,000 range. A rescue truck will be $600,000 to $700,000. Ideally, it should have an aerial in that location to benefit our ISO as well as the needs of the area that it'll respond into. That Station 13 will also respond into North Topeka, and they don't currently have an aerial apparatus that protects some of our bigger buildings out there in reference, say, Del Monte and the elevators and such. So apparatus is gonna run somewhere in the $1 million to $1.3 million range.
Michelle, did you have a comment, question?
That means that in order for us to include the two companies, the total cost to the city would be $4.4 million. Is that correct?
I would estimate probably right around $4 million. A little bit less, because we're not gonna have the 3 trucks, it would be 2 trucks, so it'd be a pumper and an aerial, best case scenario, plus the 1.9 for staffing. So about $2 million in apparatus, and 1.9 for.
Which, again, the only reason that I'm bringing this up for discussion is because we're looking today at a 4.46 increase in the mill for overall city, and we're discussing just for the fire stations, in order for us to have what we need, an additional 4 mil increase just in 2015.
In 2015, I think it's essential that we keep it in that perspective, because the reason we bring it up today, as we look at 2014, is because we're trying to cost average it, so that it's not, again, as we get out of this pickle, that we find ourselves right back in it a little over a year later.
Mr. Compo, are you done, Michelle?
I am, thank you
Okay.
very much.
Mr. Compo?
I don't think this is a bad discussion to have. You know, we need to be proactive as a body, both for police and for fire.
Well, we're just talking fire now.
I understand that, but it's a nutshell, you know, it comes together. If we could get a percentage of that built into this year mill levy increase, including cars for the police, that's something I would support. 50% would be 2.2, which means a little over 2 mils increase to offset 2015. I think our constituents would be relatively happy with us, if not mad, to be proactive in this process. If we can put some dirt into the hole for 2015, Mr. City Manager, I think that's doable.
Is there any other comments? Denise?
Just quickly, I think this has been good discussion, and I appreciate the comments, and I think that, you know, we have to remember, this to me is the core of what we do in the city, police and fire. I mean, sometimes people like to throw out, well, the state, you know, does this or does that. Well, these are the people who, you know, show up when the teenager's in a horrible crash, or your house is on fire, or your husband's dying of a heart attack. I mean, this is essential services. The state has a lot of non-essential people, which, you know, it's easy to have a hiring freeze there. It's easy to do things. You know, maybe you didn't like it if you didn't get your revenue statement as fast as you would have got it, but it's not life and death, and this is, and it really is the core of what the city does. And I think it is incumbent upon us as city council people. I mean, I get calls from people who think we should, you know, cut them in half or do this, I don't want any tax increase. You know, I get a few of those people, but by and large, I get people who tell me how important the community police officers are and how important their fire personnel are. And so I think this has been a really good discussion, but we have to, you know, keep in mind, it is gonna cost money, but it's because for so many years, the city ignored its responsibility in these areas. And we just can't do that anymore. We cannot ignore. I mean, eventually it comes back and it bites you. And unfortunately, it's this group of people who are sitting here who are in that position now. But I just hope that we remember that, because it isn't the same. You cannot compare what cities, you know, the heart of the city does to protect its people with what other government entities do. Thanks.
Nicely put, Denise. Michelle?
I would like to make a motion pretty much along the lines of what Councilmember Campos said, to add to this year's budget half of the expenses of Station 13 being manned.
There's a motion on the floor. There's a motion?
Oh, wait, do we have a current motion for that?
No.
Oh,
First-
2 million.
The first motion I'm aware of is what Councilwoman De La Isla just made, that there's not another motion on the floor. So I think there's just been a request for a second.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Okay, it's been moved and seconded.
What's the motion? Can you reread the motion?
I have that she moved to add half of the expenses of station number 13 being manned, which would be $2 million.
To this year's.
So you're increasing the budget 2 million?
For this year, because if we don't do it this year, at least half, we're gonna have to, in 2015, increase the budget.
Thank you.
Manned and equipped, thank you.
Okay, yeah, that's what I was.
Proactive
That would be-
action by this body to address 14 and 15.
Okay, there's been a motion and a second. All those in favor of the motion, raise your right hand. All those opposed, same sign.
Passes 4-8.
Was that 4-3? Okay,
It's just a majority.
thank you, Chief. Public Works, eliminate one plan, review. Yeah, she's got it.
Move to approve.
Move to approve. There's been a motion. Is there a second? We are on 4-7, top of 4-7, Jenny. Public Works elimination. There's been a motion. I will second it. Is there discussion? Elaine?
Was this one that Public Works came up with as a recommendation?
Yes, all of these
So
are.
they're
All of
okay
these
with
are.
all this, okay.
All of these are.
Okay.
Okay.
What,
Yes.
just to clarify, we had presentations from each of the departments about these. They were asked to come up with 5% cuts. So their comments indicated what the concerns would be if we did eliminate those positions. To say that they were, quote, okay with them might be, I think would be stretching it a little bit, because they were concerned that with development picking up, that in terms of us being responsive as a city, because public safety is important, but our public works is very important. People have talked about development services and our infrastructure and so on. So they were concerned that these positions would slow down our responsiveness and our oversight, just to clarify.
Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, thank you. And I'd speak to that also and actually make the same comment. And in the background material on these, the next several positions, it says the loss of this position will result in delayed electrical plan review for commercial projects. And actually, if I can speak to the next one also, the elimination will result in inspectors spending less time at sites. The developers have indicated they are more interested in getting people out to inspect their projects when they're at that point. The need is greater there than they would agree to almost increase the fees they pay to the city for this service. This service is generally self-supporting in that we charge permits, and that's involved in the inspections to bring about to pay for the inspections. And so it is somewhat of a wash. I know, of course, if we eliminate it, our funding, the revenue, the general fund can go down. But also, we're making it more difficult to provide the inspections for the construction that we want to see done. And we can hear from residential owners to developers that, why can't we get people out from the city to inspect the properties when we're ready to have them? We have to wait, we have to have our workers standing still, or send them home for a day because we're waiting for the city inspectors to come out. So this is a bigger picture of what we're talking about here. So my view is these are important that we maintain.
Okay. It's been motion and seconded. All those in favor of eliminating one plan review, raise their right hand. All those opposed, same sign. 2-5?
Yes.
Okay. Elimination one contract inspector. Is there a motion on that? Elimination one contract inspector? I'll make a motion to eliminate one contract inspector. Is there a second? Okay. All right, is there discussion? Denise?
Yeah, I would just say I would really oppose this. Probably in my 2 years of serving, the most calls I have gotten on any one subject is when they were
repaving, a much-needed road project on Southeast 37th Street between, Adams, Kansas Avenue, but that's not my district, but Adams to California. And because we did not have inspectors who could go out, the contract just sat. Contractors sat, equipment just sat on 37th Street. I got call after call of why aren't they working? Why isn't this getting done? I had people who couldn't get into their driveways. And that's just one street project. It happens all over, so I absolutely do not think we can afford to lose an inspector because we already are experiencing terrible delays in completing projects.
Okay. There's been a motion and a second on the floor. All those in favor of eliminating one construction inspector, raise your right hand. All those opposed, same sign. Get them high. 07, okay. Public Works, eliminate one surveyor. Is there a motion on the floor? Elaine?
I have a question.
Okay.
Why don't we have the amount that we are proposing to eliminate?
You can ask that amount.
It's on the other sheet.
It's on the other sheet?
Yeah.
Okay.
Is there a motion on the floor?
That's $45,000.
45.
Thank you. Is there a motion on the floor? I'll make that motion to eliminate one surveyor. Is there a second? There's been moved and seconded. All righty. All those in favor? Discussion, Karen?
I think people are scrambling for notes. Could we quickly review what the department said about the risks of cutting that position?
Mr. Mayor, can you read it off real quick? Because you got all your notes right there.
I believe this is, if I'm correct, elimination of one survey crew member will result in fewer surveys being completed, linking the time to complete public and infrastructure projects.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, there's a motion on the floor to eliminate one surveyor. And it's been moved to second. All those in favor, raise your right hand. All those opposed, same sign. All those abstaining? Okay, Jenny, is that 5-0-1? The vote. All right, this.
No, it's not.
061? I apologize.
Deputy Mayor,
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion to extend our meeting time.
So moved. Is there a second? Michelle? All right, it's been moved to second. For how long?
As much time as we may consume.
We need a time, and then we can extend from that time if we have to.
Yeah,
30 minutes.
Okay.
but can't we also say until, we're done? I thought that we could say until we're finished
Since this is.
with the agenda.
Yeah, and we haven't adopted specific rules, then yes, it could be until you've.
Is that
completed the
correct, Chad?
agenda. Yes, ma'am.
Would you like to do that?
I'd like to make a motion to extend our time until we're complete with the materials that are in front of us.
Until we complete the agenda?
The agenda, yes, sorry. Yes, can I have a second?
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor, raise your right hand. All those opposed, same sign.
I wouldn't mind a rest break, however.
We've already had one. Sorry, guys, I tried. Okay, finance, 6-7. Thank you, Mayor, for helping me out there. Finance, reduce one FTE in payroll or purchasing. Is there a motion on the floor? Motion? I'll make that motion. Is there a second? Second? It's been moved and seconded? Okay. Any discussion, quick discussion? See none? All those in, I'm sorry, Nathan?
Can we just, I'm just trying to find that in my book. Or if
City
somebody's
manager?
got it, read the,
It is
in the finance section.
Okay.
The impact of that is?
I, in page 43-1,
43-1,
It's $40,000 from a financial perspective.
I meant, yeah, the non-financial, I got the financial.
43-1.
Exactly what we're doing here.
Deputy Mayor, if I could provide just a general summary of it.
Just
I
a
mean,
quick general
would be
summary
awesome.
would be,
Yeah, very, very quick. We certainly have challenges in a payroll perspective. We're taking actions from a processing perspective, which will alleviate that. But this is a position that we would not be sad if it stayed. I mean, it is an important role. We really weren't sure whether to go from payroll or how we were gonna deal with it, but, it's an important position.
you satisfied?
Yep, thank you.
Okay. Anyone else?
I'm just curious in what capacity is it
Mr.
important?
Campos?
I'm sorry. What capacity is it important?
Deputy Mayor, Councilmember Campos, payroll is a challenge within our organization right now based on the structure of our contracts and everything else. We're taking steps to alleviate that structurally through our contracts and through our IT program. We haven't achieved all of those yet, so pulling somebody away from a challenging process it's something that we're willing to do. We'll make it work, but if we didn't have to do it, that would be beneficial to us.
Mr. Mayor?
thank you. Also, in the audits that were done for the city this year, one of the management comments was, perhaps say it as questioning to if we had sufficient staff in finance to do all the things that we expect them to do. So on that, I think we need to look at finance, make sure we are on top of it before we make any other cuts in it.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Karen?
You know, I did propose this earlier. I did some checking after we first talked about it and became convinced that though it would be tight if we were trying to trim the advances in efficiencies with both the implementation of the teletime, in teletime, whatever it's called, system, and the progress that the staff has been making to reconcile the definitions in the different contracts, as well as the economies through Lawson in personnel and payroll, as well as in purchasing, could probably allow us to do it, so, that's all.
Any other comments? All right, there's a motion on the floor. It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor to reduce 1 FTE in payroll, raise your right hand. All those opposed, same sign. All those abstaining? So it's a 241. Okay. All right. Human Resources? Human Resources, elimination 1 HR specialist position. Is there a motion on the floor? Is there a motion? I'll make the motion. Is there a second? Is there a second? There's a second. Discussion? Questions? All right. Motion to eliminate 1 HR specialist position. Raise your right hand. All those opposed, same sign. All those abstain? 331.
No, we're fine.
Did anybody else bring any cuts or enhancements to the table? Michelle?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to ask Ms. Gilbert if she could come over. Because one of my.
Do you have a sheet for us?
I do not have a sheet.
Okay.
I just have some questions for Ms. Gilbert, because one of the biggest concerns that we keep on hearing from our constituents is that they want to be able to hear us at home. They want to be able to see us clearly. And we have heard that there are deficiencies because of our budget situation that preclude us from doing that. I know that we have $70,000 right now budgeted for improvements, and my question was going to be, would that be sufficient for our people at home to see a difference? And if not, how much money would we need to add and consider for our budget?
They wouldn't see much of a difference next year with the 70. That would be 4 new cameras for council chambers. It would be some audio improvements and lights and the connection to Cox. But we really, for them to see the big difference will be for us to go all digital. That would be, and council chamber improvements for presentations, for your meetings, for the look of the chambers, which is probably the last. I mean, it's your decision, but it's probably the last on our list of priorities. And the message boards that you see on City 4, to upgrade that, which is really needed, would be about 80,000 more total. So it would be about 150 total for people at home to really see a huge improvement. And we would be all digital, no tapes, all files.
Well, would they be able to hear a difference since
Yes,
they
it would
can't
be
see
audio.
a difference?
It would be audio as well.
Okay, all right,
And new mics for you guys in council chambers and everything.
okay. Are you through, Michelle?
I am, thank you.
Okay. I really think that's great. I think you guys should turn Wichita and see what their Channel 4 does. You can't even see it, let alone hear it. And I think these guys do a great job. I think at some point we need to look at it. I just don't know if this is the year. And I too rewatch the meetings, you know, so I do get those complaints about the audio. And I just don't know if this is the year that we need to do that. Any other questions?
I think there's another.
Yeah, we'll do audio as soon as, we're gonna do Cox first, we're gonna do audio this next year. But we will have more audio enhancements in the following year.
Right, I appreciate that. And I know everybody's trying to go to digital, but I just don't know if this is the year. I think that's something kind of sits on the back of the burner again. So, thank you. Any other enhancement, or continue on, Michelle?
That's a no.
I guess not.
Okay, were you just asking for clarification?
I was asking for clarification because from the last few meetings that I've been in, I've heard several council members, one of them is not here right now, but just discuss about the importance of us being able to be transparent and be heard. So I just thought that considering the totality of our budget, $80,000 really doesn't seem like a huge significant amount to provide the changes. If we are having a guarantee that the $70,000 that we have right now in our budget are going to make an impact so that people could hear us better, and if that's what I'm hearing, then I have nothing else to add.
Okay. Anything else? Any other council members have anything else to bring forward at this particular time?
If I could, thank you. First, I want to acknowledge, I think the council did a fine job today. Excellent. We really made decisions, and we pretty much have a budget together at this point, of whatever, go on what the city manager says. You know, originally we had planned to have August 20th as the night of setting the budget, but we are moved so far along, I would like to suggest that that could be moved up a week to August 13. That gives us 1 week to really finalize, and also if there's something that we don't know, we can still finalize it on August the 20th.
We can't do that. We've already published it. Is that correct?
Yeah, we have to have the public hearing, and we
Yeah,
have that
we
set
cannot
prior
do
to the
that.
budget.
Wait a minute, no, you can have the public hearing and set the budget
Same day.
the same day.
Okay.
But I thought we published it for a certain,
On the 13th.
On the 13th.
We
We can hold the public hearing and set the budget
Right.
at the same time.
Good if you.
Yeah, I'm good, I'm very good with that.
I mean, we can still, if we don't, I mean, at that point, we can, if we haven't finalized it, we can move it another week, but we could move it set that time.
I say the 20th.
Do we
I
have
say
any
leave it.
idea of who is coming to testify on the public hearing?
No, we do not.
Never
All I can
had-
tell you is bring your lunch and something to drink.
We never have anyone. I mean,
So I would like to see it stay the same. Sorry, Mayor, I don't know if you're going out of town or something, but you'll have to cancel that.
No, I'm there. I just think I think it's better to set it 1 week and still have, if we find something significant we need to make a change on, when we get all the figures finalized one more time, we have that extra week. And otherwise, we're doing it the final night, and whatever happens that night is it, and we can't make any adjustments if you find something else out in the process. So, I think we don't have to just.
City manager can.
No, he can't, well, he can't set, the budget is set. I just think we don't have to wait till the very last day by law to set the budget. Like the school board has, most entities do not wait till the last night to do it. They do it a week or two before, or a month before. That's, okay, that's it.
Denise?
Whatever.
Just real quick, I think that's a good
I see
point,
what
but
you're
why
saying.
not bring it up Tuesday night when everybody's here?
Yeah, we could bring it up
We've
Tuesday.
got several who aren't here, and I mean, I think if you bring that issue up on next Tuesday, we'll know if that's what the majority of the council wants to do. Because that's a good point, to have an extra day, an extra time when you come back to correct.
Karen?
I really like that idea too, because what I'm sensing is, I mean, what's today, the 3rd? It's still pretty fresh with us too, if there's not a sense that we want to look at this again. Really planning time on the 13th appeals to me. I wondered, Deputy Mayor, if we could ask the finance director where we are in terms of the running total of the actions from today and what that would translate as mill levy.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Finance? Has your machine blown up yet?
It's working on it.
Okay.
So right now, we would be looking at a total mill levy increase, and this includes the incremental $2 million plus the debt service 1.08 mills of 6.72, a mill increase of 6.72.
Thank you.
And Richard left. We were gonna talk about, okay, about that 120.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's right.
That's all right. He had to
Don't deal
leave.
with Harlan Park either if we need to talk
Okay.
about that further.
All right, city manager, yeah, I'll get with Richard on that. We might have to do that at a later date. To my colleagues, do you want another meeting? Are you guys satisfied until, council night? Karen?
Now that you mention it, since we know we need to work on that transient guest tax a little bit, I'm okay with doing that, even like post-meeting on Tuesday night, not necessarily setting an extra meeting, but seeing if we can get that knocked
Well,
out.
I can poll, kinda have Jenny poll the council to see, can you do that, Jenny, on Monday, kinda poll to see where we're at and how people are feeling? And we can go from there. City manager, do you have anything else to add? I got through all your yellow for you.
Thank you. I have nothing else to add.
Finance,
Not at this time.
not at this time. Anybody else? Any comments, concerns? Michelle?
Just a closing comment. I think that today we've made, like you very well said, if there was anything that starts you into being a real city council person, I think it's a determination of a budget. And today what we are looking at is we're facing the lack of progressive action that we've had in many, many years. This is not a criticism on past council, it's not a criticism on past city managers, but I think that this body has acted on things that we had to act, and right now we're seeing the impact on that in mill numbers. The hopes is that this is not gonna be something, that we're doing today and what we're proposing are going to be things that are gonna help us, number one, become the service delivery mechanism that we aspire to be, allow our city manager then some more time for him to evaluate further efficiencies so that as we look at 2015 and 2016, this is not gonna be a situation that we're going to have anymore because we're being proactive. Is it popular? No. One of the things that I've always understood and I deal with every day in my life working with boards and with people is that everybody likes progress, but nobody likes change. And I think that this board has been very courageous, sitting together and making some very tough decisions that we're not happy with, but we understand that they have to be made.
Are there any other comments? Okay, city manager, if you can, what we did today, I know Mr. Harmon don't want another sheet, but just so we get clarity, Chad will need that clarity.
We will do that.
Okay.
This sheet, right?
I appreciate it.
I will update one sheet, one really cool final sheet.
I appreciate that. I just want to, before I conclude, I'd like to thank Chief Miller for letting us be in here Saturday after Saturday and saving money on security, and that's why I choose to be in here, so we don't have to pay that security officer. But I know this does tie up your office, and I know we leave a mess, but I appreciate it. Thank you. Seeing nothing else, this meeting's adjourned.
Make it to the air show?
You know, we went to the great escape last night.